This meeting is being conducted with a virtual component. Anyone wishing to address the board virtually may join the meeting online at https://mountainview.zoom.us/j/81047552190 or by dialing 669-900-9128 and entering webinar ID 8104-7552190. When the chair announces the item on which you wish to speak, click the raise hand feature in Zoom or dial *9 on your phone. When the chair calls your name to provide public comment, if you are participating via phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Any emails received by 4:30 p.m. today were forwarded to the PSAB. Emails received after 4:30 p.m. will not be read during the meeting, but will be entered into the record for the meeting. Recently, regional and local elected and appointed bodies have been subjected to disruptive, racist, verbal attacks by anonymous callers during virtual public comments. The city of Mountain View is fully committed to racial, religious, and cultural equity and justice as we strive to create a welcoming, safe, and inclusive community for all. This advisory body/commission welcomes respectful and non-threatening public comments regarding matters over which the advisory body/commission has jurisdiction. Comments deemed otherwise pursuant to the Council Code of Conduct and the Government Code may be grounds for immediately terminating a speaker's comment period. We're going to roll call now. Ms. Interim Board Staff Deputy City Manager, Ms. Thomas, take the roll, please.
Yes. Vice Chair Tang,
Present.
Member Ayar,
Here.
Member Rudovsky,
Here.
Member Frink,
Present.
Member Langton,
Yep.
and Member Souter.
Here. In case we haven't noticed, Chair Wang is not present, which is why I'm running the meeting. We're going to go into item 3, minutes approval, approving the minutes from December 14th, 2023. Anyone have any comments or comments or questions about the meeting minutes? Seeing as there is none, would anyone like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes? Second. Okay, we will move into the roll call vote.
Yes. Vice Chair Tang,
I'll abstain since I wasn't there.
Member Ayar,
Yes.
Member Rudovsky,
Aye.
Member Frink,
Aye.
Member Langton,
Aye.
Member Souter.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries 5 with 1 abstain.
Thank you. Going into item 4, oral communications. Item 4 is oral communications from the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the advisory board on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the PSAB from acting on non-agendized items. Would any member of the public like to provide comment on an item that is not on the agenda? If so, please submit a blue card, or if on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9 on your phone. How many speakers do we have?
Sorry. No. Now I have too many things in my face. We have 2. First, Bruce England.
Thank you, Chair. Bruce England, Wisdom Station Drive, and a member of MBCPRA, organization that's been around for quite a while, but as long as you have, working on all kinds of public safety matters. And so I'm speaking on behalf of our organization. I have several things to bring up. There are 5 total, so just to let you know, but pretty quick, each one of them. One is that we noted that the city roster no longer includes advisory body member contact information, including PSAB. And that's really unfortunate because there are times where we really do want to contact individuals or subgroups, not the entire advisory body. And this, right, the way it is, we're unable to do that. That's, again, unfortunate, but it's a city matter, not something for you unless you wanted to advocate for it. Second, I've been talking back and forth with Chief Canfield about things. He's been very helpful with his information providing. We've been talking about weapons take back policies and procedures and weapons retiring, things like that. It's all very interesting information. He might talk about it, but just to let you know that we're having that conversation. And City Council talked about it also when they talked about legislative priorities. So they have an interest in this too. It's been in the press. And also, side note, great to see that you are covering legislative priorities in your work plan. You're one of 2 advisory bodies doing that in addition to BPAC. So kudos to you for doing that. Third, I also having a conversation with Chief Canfield about the Office of Transportation. Wait a minute, am I going to get that right? Office of Transportation Safety from the state and how that might be spent. There are a variety of categories, and we just wanted to comment that we would like to see that money, as it's used by Mountain View, to be applied towards things that are tangible and useful, and maybe less towards marketing, the public relations, advertising, and marketing, unless that includes education. 4, the county is now providing Narcan for free. You can get it by contacting them. hhs.sscgov.org or call them and they'll get it to you. Narcan has a clip on YouTube that's 1 minute long, and it gives you very concise information about how to use it. I've got a couple in my backpack in case I ever encounter somebody in trouble. So I'm happy I've been able to do that. And lastly, number 5, we are seeing that the TAL, the tentative agenda list for you, is still for 2023. You don't have your 2024 posted. And we're wondering, related, when that is covered in discussion at your meetings during work plan discussion, when does that happen? If it's in item 6, it might need to be called out as a sub item so that people are aware, including us, that that's going to come up during that point. And that's it that I have. Somebody else might say more, but that's what I have. Thank you.
Next, we have Tim McKenzie.
Hi, all. Great to be able to join in virtually. I'm very appreciative of that ability. Looking forward to the meeting tonight. I just, as I was logging on to the meeting, realized how kind of convoluted it is to actually find the Zoom info. The PSAB website doesn't have a direct link to either the Legistar website or the Zoom info directly. And the Legistar website, like when I go there, as far as I can tell, I have to download the agenda to actually be able to access it and be able to see the Zoom info. It'd be great if the PSAB website had a direct link to the meetings on Legistar and had the Zoom info in a way that you could sort of find it at a glance and be able to access it while recognizing the need for Zoom safety and etiquette of making sure we don't get Zoom bombings, as was brought up by the chair at the beginning. Just wanted to flag that. Thanks a lot.
Is that our last speaker?
Yes.
Okay. We will now close oral communications and move to a discussion / action items. To facilitate participation by all PSAB members, I will be recognizing in turn each member who signals they are ready to speak. After all members who wish to speak on an item have done so, I will recognize members who have additional comments. We're moving on to 5.1, the twice yearly report on MVPD performance and feedback data. Lieutenant Matt Atkins and Lieutenant Evan Rowell will present the twice yearly report on performance and feedback.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So as mentioned, Lieutenant, I'm Matt Atkins, Lieutenant, and also presenting with me will be Evan Crowell, Police Lieutenant. This presentation will cover the twice yearly report on MVPD performance and feedback data. There is an accompanying staff report included with this meeting agenda. I will start off by providing a quick overview of this presentation. We will cover the background of this working item, discuss the different types of feedback mechanisms and performance data that MVPD collects. We'll review the actual feedback and data for each mechanism and also discuss potential next steps. As the board recalls, at your meeting on October 27th, 2022, you received a presentation and were given a staff report highlighting the different types of feedback mechanisms in place at MVPD and programs that were under development. At that meeting, you approved receiving twice annual reports on several of MVPD's feedback mechanisms, including MVPD social media engagement, MVPD-X, the informal police chiefs advisory group consisting of Latino Community Advisory Committee, and the Faith Leader Advisory Council, My 90, which is a customer service survey, MVPD personnel complaints, SRO complaints and feedback, and WIPA data. MVPD continues to strive to integrate social media and policing. This is done across numerous platforms and with our philosophy to create community connections, improve access, strengthen transparency efforts. This is achieved through purposeful development of social media channels and long-term relationship building. MVPD's approach to provide transparency and insight into operations, culture, and important information such as criminal activity, road hazards, and other public safety concerns. Social media allows us another way to have two-way communication about non-urgent issues. Posts are shared in a more personal tone, designed to tell meaningful stories consistent with the culture of the Mountain View Police Department. Our primary social media channels are Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, and Nextdoor. These platforms often will share similar information. However, they do tend to have their own unique best style. This slide shows MVP social media data. You will see that some information is not there. It's not available without additional social media analytics software. With that being said, the Mountain View Police Department has gained additional social media data analytic abilities in October of 2023 when it joined the City of Mountain View Sprout Social account. Going forward, MVP will examine what increased reporting is feasible. Sprout Social is a social media management platform. Staff is able to use Sprout Social to set up and release posts on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly Twitter. This includes the ability to share written messages, images, and videos. Staff can then use the platform to track analytics and trends regarding these post campaigns. MVPDX, Partnering for the Future of Policing, is a community-focused program that began in 2020 and will host its 6th cohort in spring of 2024. The 8-week program consists of both experiential scenario-based exercises, and in-depth conversations about various themes and topics of policing. This program was designed to foster dialogue and has served as a valuable method for the MVPD to receive feedback. In September 2023, MVPD hosted an alumni event for all 5 cohorts to help begin to develop future iterations of the program. MVPDX feedback resulted in the development of other programs slated to launch in 2024 to include MVPDX programs hosted in Spanish and MVPDY, a condensed version of the program designed to connect with high school students in our community and provide an opportunity for sharing and learning and obtaining a better understanding of the youth perspective on policing and youth safety. Stemming from MVPDX feedback were 2 informal chief advisory groups. Created in 2021 with the Faith Leadership Advisory Council. Participants included a range of leaders from different faith-based houses of worship in Mountain View. They share ideas about how the PD can improve communication, progressions in the community, and how communication can be shared and improved with these organizations. The program has also enabled better information sharing regarding resources for our community members who are unstably housed. Created in 2021, Latino Community Advisory Committee, LCAC, is composed of both civic and faith-based leaders with a goal of ensuring strong communication between MVPD and Mountain View's Latino community by creating access, information, and transparency to the Mountain View Police Department. LCAC creates opportunities to hear additional Latino voices, improve community safety, and enhance the department's relationship with our Latino community. Although LCAC was inactive during the selection process of the new police chief, LCAC has since been reestablished. In October 2023, Chief Canfield was introduced to the group, communicated his vision, and answered questions from the council. In August of 2022, MVPD partnered with My 90. My 90 is an anonymous customer service platform. Upon completion of a police incident, a survey link is sent to the customers. These include victims of crimes, witnesses, and people making police reports. It does not include people receiving citations or being arrested. Currently, the My90 information is shared with the Mountain View Police Department management team and is used to help gauge the quality of MVPD's customer service, indications of bias or the perception of bias, and the effectiveness of officers' communication. This information helps identify strengths and areas of growth. During the previous 2023 PSEB twice yearly report, PSEB identified several next steps and recommendations. Those include first, internal review and discussion of the results. Data is now shared monthly with the MVPD management team to discuss results and explore any strategic or operational changes. Second, explore having My90 data available through a public dashboard. MVPD is working on a robust public dashboard and plans to incorporate My90 data into that project. And finally, evaluate feedback specific to MVPD community engagement events. MVPD exploring options to collect and assess community engagement related data and pathways for making this information actionable. As you can see in this slide, when asked, how did they view MVPD? 86% viewed MVPD as either very positive or positive. 8% had a neutral view. 4% had a negative and 2% had a very negative. This slide depicts the My90 community sentiment feedback, where on average 91% of respondents felt they were treated well. Across all race, ethnicity groups, people in Mountain View had a generally positive view of the Mountain View Police Department. Of the My90 respondents, there's a slightly larger number of males that were contacted. Approximately 91% of our contacts were people of 28 years of age or older. When asked about community safety concerns, 39% felt that theft was their biggest concern. Over half, 51% of respondents felt that increased patrol car visibility would increase safety in the community. This twice annual report includes a chart of the previous 6-month personal complaint data, Q1 and Q2 2023, and the most recent 6 months of complaint data, Q3 and Q4 of 2023. You have received data on the following categories: origin, sworn status, nature of the complaint, disposition of the investigation, and the level of. Of the 7 total complaints the Mountain View Police Department received in Q1 and Q2 in 2023, 4 resulted in internal affairs investigations. 4 were pending, 2 were unfounded, 1 was sustained, 2 were major, 5 were minor. Of the 8 total complaints the Mountain View Police Department received in Q3 and Q4 2023, 3 resulted in internal affairs investigations. 2 were pending, 6 were unfounded, 0 were sustained. There was 1 major and 1 minor.
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to take over the second half of the presentation. And we're going to start with the school resource officer complaints. As indicated in the SRO MOU, there's a requirement that states that the district and its administrators shall provide mechanisms for students to provide feedback, make complaints, or document details of their interactions with all the SROs. Also in the MOU, it states that those concerns shall be routed to the field operations captain, which is currently Captain McGee. The Mountain View Los Altos High School District has identified the principal and the vice principal for both Mountain View High School and Alta Vista as the administrative staff members who received this feedback about the SRO program. And currently, in Q3 and Q4, there were no specific complaints that were relayed from the district related to the SRO program. 2 additional feedback mechanisms that have been implemented are the Student Advisory Committee, which is a committee of a diverse group of students that has direct access to administrators to provide feedback. So it gives the students that opportunity to provide feedback about the SRO program. And also on the websites for the district is an anonymous tip line that allows the students to provide feedback as well anonymously. So the Racial and Identity Profiling Act, which, as you recall, mandates that California law enforcement agencies collect data when a detention is made. For the purposes of RIPA, a detention is when a person is stopped and they're not free to leave, or they are consensually contacted and are searched. So those are the two definitions of a stop that would require a RIPA entry. I'm going to do a presentation of some of the data involved for Q3 and Q4. And you'll just see on the next few slides, the data is broken down for Q3 and Q4 individually. The RIPA required data fields are, we are required to do the date, time, duration, and location of the stop, perceived age, perceived race, perceived gender, and perceived LGBTQ status of the person stopped, whether person stopped has limited or no English fluency, perceived or known disability of the person stopped, reason for the stop, whether the stop made was in response to a call for service, and what actions were taken by the officer during the stop. And in addition to those requirements, the Mountain View Police Department also collects info regarding whether the officer making contact believed the subject was having a mental health challenge at the time, and at what point during the contact the officer believed they could perceive the subject's race and gender. And consistent with your recommendation, the presentation is going to give the accompanying staff report contains the data, as I mentioned, from Q3 and Q4. So in the first slide here, we're going to go over the data regarding the question of was this initiated by a service call? So you can see in this data as outlined in the chart for Q3 and Q4. Total RIPA entries for Q3 and Q4 were 2,488 RIPA entries total. Roughly 13% in Q3 and 14% in Q4 were related to calls for service, and 86% in Q3 and 85% in Q4 proactive related entries. For perceived ethnicity, RIPA data was able to provide ethnicity that was perceived by the officer. Two largest groups being Hispanic Latino, which was 44% and 45% in Q3 and Q4. And white, which is 23% and 23% respectively in Q3 and Q4. The next slide will be the officer's perceived LGBTQ status. From the data, there were only 10 entries out of the 2,488 where the officer perceived the person was LGBTQ. And also I forgot to mention for the dates, just specifically, as you can see on there, Q1 was July 1, 2023 to September 30th, 2023, and Q4 was October 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023. The next slide will be perceived gender by the officer. And from the data, out of 1,835 of the contacts, which is roughly 74%, were perceived to be male. And just as for a note of clarification, cisgender man and cisgender woman is the terminology that will be used going forward in 2024. There's a small percentage that was identified as cisgender, and that is because the RIPA stops, that terminology was entered before, about a week before as a testing before 2024 hit. So there was a few entries where that was selected. So going forward, it will either be cisgender man or cisgender woman. For any perceived disability, a total of 8 people were perceived to have a disability by the officer. 4 were perceived to have as mental health disabilities. 1 was intellectual or developmental disability. 1 was a speech impairment or limited use of language disability, and 2 were other or unknown disabilities. The data for perceived limited English, a vast majority, roughly 93%, were not perceived to have limited English. And those are broken down again in Q3 and Q4. The next slide will be reasons for the stop for Q3. So Q3 listed, we have the reasons listed for the stops. 882 were traffic violations. 152 were for reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. 22 were consensual encounters. 9 were knowledge of outstanding warrants, 7 were investigations related to truancy, and 4 were known to be on probation or parole. For Q4, the same data, there was 1,000 traffic violations, 193 reasonable suspicion for criminal activity, 24 were consensual encounters, 10 were knowledge of outstanding warrants, 10 were investigations related to truancy, 2 were known to be on probation and parole, and 2 were were stops to determine truancy related. As for when the gender was first perceived by the officers, roughly 88% was at first contact and 12% being prior to the stop. For when the race was first perceived, 88% was at first contact, and again, 12% was prior to the stop. In terms of mental health, for our contacts, officers perceived that 89% of the individuals were believed not to have a mental health challenge, with 9% being not sure either way if there is some form of level of mental health when they were contacted, and 2% were perceived to have a mental health challenge. For results of the stop, as you can see by the graph, over half of the stops were resulted in a warning given for quarters 3 and 4. Roughly 25% were warnings, 7% were without a warrant was the result, an arrest without a warrant as a result of the stop. And others could be a consensual search where there was no arrest. So they were consensually searched, which is requires a RIPA entry, and then they were free to leave. So to wrap up here, is in the future feedback reporting, obviously Mountain View Police Department is going to continue prioritizing transparency to create, and we're currently working on a public facing dashboard to increase the public's access to the Mountain View Police Department. Data from this future dashboard and the link will be included in the future twice annual feedback reports to the PSAP committee. And that concludes the presentation, and we're happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you, lieutenants. Board members, do any of you have questions before I open this item to public comment?
Yes, I have two. It looks to me like in Q3 and Q4, the data is about the same. Everything, all the graphs look about the same. But I'm wondering, are we looking for any trend over the years? So we have, when we look at data from, we've been looking at this data in small increments, like every 6 months. But I can't see what's going on from 2021 when we started to 2024 where we are now. Have you got anything like that? And is there anything you're trying to strive for when you're looking at this data?
That's a chief for you.
Member Borovsky, are you specifically referring to data related to RIPA, or is there any general area of data that you have more kind of, you're more directing that question towards?
Mostly the RIPA data, because that's where you're picking up a whole lot of numbers. But I just wonder what, I know you have to keep it by law, but what do you do with it?
Well, technically by law, it's a very interesting question. By law, we need to provide it to the Department of Justice. We aren't required to share it or make it accessible through a dashboard or put it in a mobile friendly format. Those are things that we think are important. You can do a Records Act request, I suppose, but that's a whole different process. We want the data to be accessible to be looked at. Some of the feedback that we got from the community was that they wanted to look at the data in this raw CSV format. And so they could examine and look for trends or concerns. And that certainly was something that we were able to do. Although we have not heard back that there are trends that people are concerned about, I anticipate and expect that people are looking at this data and examining it. Furthermore, prior to RIPA, which we don't have 4 years, I think this is, we're just going into our 2nd year of RIPA data collection for Mountain View Police Department. Different agencies, depending on their size, required data collection for RIPA earlier than others. So this is we're in the beginning of our second year. We were comparing our previous stop data that had some similarities to RIPA. And as you recall, or hopefully you recall, research fellow Alex Stevenson analyzed that previous data and made recommendations for taking the future RIPA data, overlapping it as best as possible until we have, a 5-year chunk of RIPA data, and then applying that same research methodology, which is absolutely something that the police department and the city are committed to doing. We just need to onboard a new research fellow, and we had to onboard first a crime analyst that has helped us dramatically with data collection, data formatting, et cetera. So that is complete. It is a priority of the organization to research and find a new research fellow or equivalent to that position. That person will apply that verified and vetted research methodology that was designed by research fellow Stevenson in partnership with Stanford University and Cal, and then apply that in or take our new data and then apply that same research methodology and report back on findings. And we will make that absolutely public upon its completion.
But the question is, are you hoping to use this information to inform yourself about a different, maybe different methods in policing, or is it just to fill the requirement of the state? I know you have to do that, but
Yes.
is there anything else the data can give you? Because I look at it and I think, well, okay, that's interesting. And as 75% of your arrests are for theft or something like that, and well, do you hope that goes up or down compared to murder or something?
Yes. Well, compared to murder, I'm happy with the theft, for the record.
But
Yeah.
that's kind of what, I just wonder if you're looking for anything particular, if you're just filling a requirement, a state requirement.
Yes, I think in conversations with research fellow Stevenson, the best use of this RIPA data right now, with as far back as we have, is to look at changes in practice. So let's say we change a beat structure or we onboard a significant number of new officers and we see some type of shift. So we can look at a date in which we made a significant change to policy practice, something within the organization, maybe equipment, who knows? And then examine from that point, were there any statistically significant changes? That was really his feeling of how this data would be the most beneficial, other than the standard research methodology. But there is significant data, new data being collected at a federal level that gives us much better information about who our victims are, our reporting parties, our suspects, our officers. And it's the NIBRS data, and forgive me for not knowing the acronym. That data will end up and will result in significantly better, more robust, more useful tools and examination of the use of our resources in the future, no doubt.
That data is looking at what Mountain View Police Department is doing, or police departments in general across the US?
So I know it is police departments in general across the US. I don't know if every agency of every size, I don't know the nuance aspects of NIBRS, but I know that we've been reporting it for some time, but I think approximately 2 years. In fact, when we look back at some of our old crime data, it often has an asterisk now because now things are, with new data comes new categories, and so it's hard to compare sets one for one. I believe it's a complete nationwide standard with no exception, but I would have to double check that.
I have one more question, but I have to figure out what it is. If somebody else wants to ask.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Member Ayer.
Oh, okay, thank you. I have a few questions, but I'll start with one because I think it's like a two-parter. I'm trying to reconcile, and maybe this is a math question that I didn't figure out. What percentage of police interactions with the public end up getting, because it's random, but end up getting a My90 survey?
So this, gentlemen, are you more familiar with My90? Do you want to handle that, Matt, or Evan? I am fairly familiar.
Feel like I can answer that one, yeah.
So My90 actually sends out a survey to, it's certain categories that we select, and My90 sends it to everybody that falls within that category. Whether they choose to complete it or not is up to them.
Right.
But My90 does not submit surveys to people that we give tickets to or people that we arrest.
Okay.
But people who call us for crimes or victims of crimes or who need a service are listed as a subject or a witness in a case.
Okay.
They are connected to and a survey is sent. Also, there has to be some type of along call, we have to have a cell phone number or an email address associated in the CAD and the computer assisted dispatch that they can receive it. So everybody doesn't get one, but everybody that falls into that category of a cell phone or an email address and the selected categories, they all get them.
Okay. So do you have a sense of what percentage? I don't know, I don't care about that. I think I've answered that. Is the My90 available in Spanish?
So the beauty of My90 is that it populates to a phone in the language that's preferred to on the phone.
Okay.
So it was a high priority. I wouldn't be thrilled about maintaining a contract with My90 if it was only in English and all of the people completing it only completed it in English. So yes, it is multilingual.
I'm wondering if the people who answer the My90, if it's representative of so the demographics of those who respond, is that representative of the demographics of the people that get the survey? Right?
We don't know it's completely anonymous, so we don't know the demographics of the folks. We don't have a way to vet the demographics without counting one for one of who would get that. So our computer system, we can't pull out and separate out those data sets and then compare them. That's not something I'm capable of doing.
For example, if almost 60% of the people that responded to My90 are white, or identify as white, I'm trying to figure out if that correlates to the rough percentage of people who consider themselves white who received the survey.
Right.
And there's no way to know that.
No, all I know is that of the people, no, because we won't know anything about someone who receives the survey but doesn't complete it. Does that answer? So we don't know anything about those
So,
people.
okay, so you don't know, okay, I think I understand. So you don't know if it's so random that gosh, what am I trying to ask? It seemed overwhelmingly white respondees, and I just don't know. I'm trying to figure out why.
Yeah,
So
and I think.
don't know if there's a way to
so
answer that.
I think NIBR's data would be something that may in the future coincide with those types of questions. But I can't say as to why, or, I know that we look at how we compare to other agencies. And I'm thankful that I'm not surprised, but thankful that our overall relationship in the community, which is very strong, is reflected in these numbers. And it tends to be better than other clients of My90. But I don't know, how the kind of racial breakdown of persons who fill that out versus persons who are eligible to fill it out, how that adequates, nor do I know how it compares to population specific numbers. And a better number would be population that use our services, right? So it's
Right.
really general population would be the wrong way to compare. It would be to look at, we need to know who uses our services and then
Right.
of those.
And how do you make the survey respondents more representative of people who are utilizing the services? And I'm not sure if I'm not sure if that correlates right now. I don't think it does.
Yeah, I don't know that it doesn't, but I also don't know that it does. But what I don't want to do is have our officers going out and saying, hey, don't forget to complete this survey. Because I want a true fair, because if I thought you were mad at me,
Yeah.
member IR, I might forget to mention that.
Yeah, go ahead and send me the
But if I
survey.
thought of member Bodowski was pleased with my services, I'd say, member Bodowski, please don't forget, and that could cook the books essentially. And I want to have this tells us people who wanted to complete that survey,
Yeah.
this was their feeling. So perhaps what you're asking for is something broader and different. But I don't think that it negates the significance of the ability to poll and see who wants to complete it. But I get your point. It would be nice to know who doesn't complete this survey.
And
And where do they, and what are they, how would they answer all those things? Or certainly, at least how would they fit into the demographics?
it would be nice. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, National Incident-Based Reporting System.
Thank you very much.
It
It almost came off my tongue.
was driving me crazy.
Thank you, member Green.
Also, may I ask one other question? This is completely outlandish, but forgive me, it's in my head. Why not ask the folks that you arrest and ticket for their input on their experience?
So, My 90 was designed to really gauge broad community feelings about police interactions. I think it was less designed, the intent from the company was less about persons who are, subject to police arrest or, social or the criminal justice system.
Mhm.
It really is designed about broader community perspectives. And although that I would be very interested for a separate survey to be sent, it would probably skew that data. But if My 90s creates a process and a program for folks who are arrested, that would be something to look at. But mind you, they may lose their phone because it might be evidence. They may not have access to it before the survey could expire, depending on what they're arrested for. And that could present a whole nother level of disparities in who has access and other problems with that type of data being collected. But it's an interesting question.
That's a relatively small subset of people, right? Versus the general public.
That we arrest? Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thankfully.
Sorry.
Thanks, board member Wente.
I guess two things. I just want to say that with regards to the RIPA data, the fact that you're putting up there in CSV, I think I've already seen in an email to the PSAB members that somebody did comment on like
It's Hispanic.
the racial Hispanic skew or something like that. So I think just sharing it with the public is a positive thing because there's going to be plenty of people that'll come over that, and give some feedback. And then my other question might be to you guys is, with regards to searches, consensual search, I assume could involve the person, the vehicle, and or a domicile. What about do you guys do pat frisk? Like if an officer feels like, it's the middle of the night, as a car that they pull over with, they did some kind of furtive gesture. So the officer believes that they might be hiding a weapon or something, so they kind of search in the periphery of the person. Is that, it's like a non-consensual search, but do you guys do that still?
Yeah, if it's not consensual and there is a pat down being conducted and it was not consensual, then it would have to be for reason that the officer believes that person might be armed.
Yeah.
Or holding some type of weapon. So it is nothing random. But if it is involved with the detention, not consensual, and a search is done, then a pat down would be if there was reason to believe that there was a weapon on the person or they had access.
So, but there isn't any data collected on that type of search.
Not specifically to RIPA, if I'm understanding.
Is there a high risk search, or is there something in the RIPA data related to high risk or weapon search?
There, I don't believe so.
That's fascinating. Good question.
Yeah, this is my own. And then as far as a consensual search, it could be any of the above, the person, the vehicle, depending on how they're found or where you interact with them. Okay, thanks.
Member Langton, have any questions? All right, I have a few of my own. I get comments from, or I guess questions from the public about like mug shots on social media or on like online communications. And I know they're not included in all communications, but like, what's the policy on including mug shots of detainees on those posts?
Can I answer that one? So the laws have changed related to social media posts of persons booking photos. So booking photos, already we were complying with a law that required us to have like either a felony or a significant public safety interest. that justified sharing that photograph. And that still allows us for significant cases, for major cases, to share a photograph, a booking photo, if we're looking for other victims or witnesses of a crime, or if there's a compelling public interest. So it could be a major crime. That photo would be subject to being shared legally. But the new law that went into effect this calendar year requires us to remove those photos within 14 days of them being posted regardless. So yes, there's a public interest, and yes, we may be looking for witnesses or other victims, but not in perpetuity. Those are up for 14 days and then they are removed.
Okay, thank you. So when talking about My 90, it was said that the data gets shared monthly with the management team. Is there an example of like any strategic or operational changes that came as a result of reviewing the results of My 90?
Frankly, no. Right now, it's, what I would be interested in seeing is if there was a change in those My 90 numbers. I mean, as you can see, they've been fairly resoundingly positive. But if some point, whether it's within a specific demographic or just as a whole, we started shifting dramatically positive or dramatically negative, or people felt like they received a worse service, then we would look at greater either organizational changes, new groups of sergeants that are communicating something differently, and kind of look backwards to see, reverse engineer to see what was being done that's different. In this case, that hasn't happened, so we haven't had the need, but we're definitely tracking and looking, and there were some kind of, frankly, kind of small changes in those numbers, but we were still curious, well, why were we seeing fewer people? In fact, it was fewer people were completing the surveys, and we wanted to know, are we doing something different? Is this some kind of problem? And so we reached out to the My 90 team we have a monthly meeting with them. They pulled larger groups of data, and for whatever reason, just people were filling out fewer surveys across their client base within that time frame. So it was strangely, I don't know if it was Jungian or what it was, but people were all in the same kind of synchronicity of completing surveys online for police interactions. So it was standard, but we did start looking to see, are we doing something different? And we were not.
Thank you. My last question is, the lieutenants discussed the student advisory committees as a mechanism for feedback on our SROs. Pardon if this was discussed at like a previous meeting or something before, but I was curious about who selects these students, how are they selected for this advisory committee?
Take that one if you want. Yeah, in speaking with school administrators, they are selected, and they're selected intentionally to make it a diverse group amongst it's a representative of all the students at the school. So then they are selected by administration, and obviously they have to volunteer to accept the selection, and then they're on the advisory board for the students, and then they relay information that they get from the students with direct access to administration.
Those are all my questions. I'll bring it back to discussion after public comment. So would any member of the public like to provide comment on this item? If so, please submit a blue card, or if on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9 on your phone.
The first one is Tim McKenzie.
Hi all. Thanks for some of the questions that already came up. I actually had the exact same one. So particularly about the response rate of My 90 data versus the number of people that get it. And I really like the idea and suggestion of also asking people who are getting citations or getting arrested about their experiences. It seems like a huge proportion of the people that would be interacting with the police that we would want to know what that looks like. So I want to call out and thank the board members for the thoughtful questions there. And then I specifically had a question on the RIPA data and maybe a suggestion for the future presentations on this topic. I think having the demographic breakdowns of contacts instead of two separate graphs for the 2 quarters. I think it might be really useful to have the data for whatever the period we're looking at is, and then compare to the demographics more generally. I don't think we had the same issues that would come into with my 90, in that the demographics for this are presumably anyone in Mountain View, either people living here or passing through. And I just, having that global data, I think would be really helpful and important, because I couldn't help but notice that one, a super majority of stops were initiated by officers. It was 85%. That's a huge, huge fraction. And there was also a super majority of male gender people being stopped in these officer initiated interactions. I don't know the demographic breakdowns across other dimensions, but societally we're more or less 50-50 men and women. And there was very, very clear difference in the data, which indicates potential bias to me. And I think being able to see the data from the period we're overviewing next to the reasonable expectation of the whole population that might be contributing to that data, I think could be really helpful. Thank you.
Next we have Dana Petey.
Hi all, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for this work. It's a ton of great information and awesome questions as well. Learned a lot. I have a number of points, so I'm going to go through them as quick as I can, but I'll say page numbers as it helps. I think some might have been answered already, but I'll just allude to that real quick. Page 2, we noticed that it said that thing about as required by law, which we were curious about at first because we weren't sure what law it was referring to regarding the social media posts. After hearing Chief Canfield's response on the booking photos question, I'm wondering if it's alluding to that, but I was curious about it just because the paragraph mentions the legal requirement, but doesn't, reference what that legal requirement was. On page 4, we noticed you mentioned the informal advisory groups, like the faith-based and community organizations. And we were hoping for clarification on which houses of worship and which civic leaderships organizations were represented in the work, since we like collaborating. Oh, MVCPRA, haha. Since MVCPRA likes collaborating with other community organizations, and it's useful to know who's in the loop. Similarly, with events open to the public, like the National Faith in Blue event and things like that, we're curious, how can the public know about events like that? We love seeing mention of that dashboard that y'all are talking about, and love to hear that it's going to be integrated. One isn't replacing the other, but that they're working in tandem. Thank you so much for that, and we're excited for any updates you can share about a timeline, perhaps. On page 7, I got a little confused at first about what the table was trying to show, where it was telling numbers. I think it's numbers of people and how positively they view the MV Police Department broken down by race or ethnicity. I think we've parsed through what it means, but it was just a little bit unclear what question was being answered in that survey, and also what units the numbers were in. I'm a math teacher. I'm a stickler for units. What can I say? If I was confused by it, I would imagine other people in the public might have been as well. I really appreciate member IR's questions about the demographic data and comparing the response data to, the possible, or the demographic data regarding possible respondents. I heard how complicated the question is. I agree it's pretty challenging without a clear-cut answer, but we hope this question continues to get investigated because we were also curious about it. So we'll keep noodling about that one for sure. 2 more. Page 10 was a really interesting question about community members' #1 safety concerns. And I noticed when it's phrased as, what's the #1 concern? Someone who's barely concerned about any of these, but is barely concerned about theft will choose theft. Someone who's highly concerned about all of these, but most concerned about theft, say a 10 compared to 9s, would also choose theft. So it was interesting to see that the phrasing of the question makes it a little bit hard to parse out who is, what degree of concern there is when it's just pick your #1 concern. I was just curious if there's any consideration to having respondents indicate their degree of concern. For example, on a scale from 1 to 4, how concerned are you about each issue? That might provide a richer understanding of what it is, how seriously the public is sharing each of these concerns, not just relative to each other. We'd also be curious if this data could get corroborated with actual crime data regarding, if concern about theft is up, is that substantiated
11
by
seconds.
numbers of theft? Thanks.
Oh, she just.
She just made it.
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, okay.
Let's be compassionate.
Just under the curve there.
Speakers.
Oh, okay. Bringing this back for PSAB discussion, do any board members have comments? Member Ayar?
Thank you, Chair. Are you, can we call you
Vice.
Chair
You're
today?
still vice.
You're still Vice Chair. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair. I wasn't sure if you became Chair suddenly. I have a couple of clarifying questions. And I wanted to lift up some of the comments from the public. First, I wanted to ask Mr. McKenzie if you could follow, I didn't really follow your question or suggestion, and I'm wondering if you could follow up with me privately so I can pass that on. Because I didn't really follow it. If someone else followed it and wants to raise it up here, please do, because I'm interested, but I didn't fully understand it. I had a couple of questions about the I know what I had a question about. The community input on public safety concerns and safety improvements. I like the idea, and so that I believe Ms. Petey mentioned about degree of concern, because theft is the number one. So I had I'm like, okay. Is that because they could only choose one, but they're also really worried about homelessness? So I like the idea about checking in on degrees. So just wanted to put that out there for if that's possible, that would be great to see, because I think that would give us a richer understanding. And then reconciling with actual crime. Do you guys agree that, are you surprised, or do you agree that the number one safety concern is theft? Is that like, you're like, yeah, okay, we expected that, or kind of like, it's not that big of a deal, given the current crime stats? Curious what your thoughts are on that.
I was not surprised to see that theft is such a concern to the community, both because of the significant amounts of theft, but also because it gets a lot of play in the media. And I suspect that
Next door.
whatever goes to the media, that we would see a significant jump in that uptick. It's that kind of collective unconscious of concern that people have. But certainly auto burglars are a problem. Catalytic converters, retail theft, these are all real things that definitely.
Porch theft.
Yes, porch pirates, people who steal packages, and tools from vehicles, those are all significantly impactful to the community.
Right.
And they impact different parts of the community differently, quite frankly. One who has their tools stolen from their work truck, if they're living paycheck to paycheck and hand a mouth, that's significantly more impactful on their quality of life than something else. So it may be, in fact, very much elevated because of that.
Okay. Curious about that. And then on the, if half of the respondents felt increasing patrol car visibility would increase safety, does that change anything for you in terms of, I'm assuming visibility is actual, it's not painting your cars pink, it's actually having more circles within neighborhoods, or I'm not sure exactly what that means, visibility, but does that mean something to you guys, and would it affect a way you go about something?
No, it's not surprising to me. What would change might perhaps not how we patrol, but the manner in which we patrol, or the engagements that we do and the communications that we do on patrol, as if that was reversed. And people would feel less safe if they had more officers patrolling their areas. So hearing that resonates, that's consistent with feedback that we get personally, that I've received personally, and that I believe that our organization receives daily. And our officers, when they're in the community, make people in the community feel more safe simply by being there. They believe that they're safer, and I would believe that they'd be safer too by having an officer here. So that really kind of supports that concept. And I'd be more concerned about a reverse, where we see some shift or some trend, or if we ever just started off with people don't want and don't feel safe about these cars in their neighborhoods.
Right. Okay, thank you. And then I think I've heard a couple of comments about the public dashboard being really, people seem really interested in that. Do you have a timeline at this point for that dashboard?
So no, the short answer is I don't have a timeline.
Okay.
We do have actively being built, and I don't know if I call them beta versions, but like early display versions or of a number of dashboards related to transparency of the department, RIPA type data, but also crime metrics and numbers. So we're actively working on them. That was a high priority for our crime analyst that we were able to onboard. And if you recall, we had a long stint without a crime analyst, about, I think, 6 to 7 months. And that really was a significant impact on the organization. We now have a better crime analyst. I'm thrilled with the person that we found. She's doing incredible work. And she is actively working on those, but timeline, I don't have.
So if I said, what, might it be this calendar year? You're not.
No, it would certainly be this calendar
Okay.
year. Is it 3 months? Is it 2 months? We need to look at the product, see is it meeting our expectations? Sit down and really review these things and
Okay.
go through them. It'd be one thing if we had a quality dashboard in place and we were looking at refining what we need to build. And when you build, then inevitably we'll need to retool a little bit in the design.
Right, thank you.
Any other members? Oh,
I just have one question. And I'm just using my own sort of unscientific observation, but when I'm out and about. But the patrol unit is not like, they don't have any, there's no lulls in the day, like they're busy, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Different shifts have different levels of calls for service, and that is something that we track, and we look at how we staff based on calls for service. So your swing shift hours, the noon to maybe 10 p.m., that time is a significantly higher call volume. So we have more officers working there during that time. There are times when our nighttime officers are graveyard officers, have time without call volume, and as significantly more than a swing shift officer. And a day shift officer is probably something in between, but closer to a swing shift officer. But there is time in an officer shift where they're not assigned to calls, and that's something that we measure and look at in our staffing groups and our in how we design our teams, patrol teams.
I see. So you're, when you have busier times, you have more officers on, so their visibility might be affected because it's very busy. So maybe they're not sitting and doing paperwork or.
Yeah, I think what you would see, you would probably be less likely to see a patrol officer driving through your neighborhood during busy swing shift hours, because there's probably a higher probability that they have calls for service. Having said that, our calls for service are manageable, and our officers do have enough time, and our staffing is adequate for them to go and do proactive police work, to drive through neighborhoods, et cetera. Just that there are times when that's less likely to occur than other times, but the staffing allows for that for sure. We are not an agency that has no time to follow up on investigations or starts a shift with a stack of calls that they don't get to by the end. Unfortunately, some communities have police departments, so that's how they have to operate. I'm very thankful that that is not how we have to operate.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? I was trying to space myself out, but as usual, I have most questions. So the table 4 with procedural justice, where it talks about that most people have a generally positive view of the MVPD. Do you guys know or what that question actually is that results in this chart that you have? I thought that was brought up by the public. I think that's a good question. How is that question phrased? You might need to come back to us and understand.
Yeah, I think we would need to come back to it. I think it's very close to exactly how you read it. But we would need to look for sure.
Okay, I think that would be helpful because I'm interested in that. For the SRO advisory committees, I'm wondering when we have our next SRO report, if we could actually understand a little bit more what the kids in those advisory committees are saying that could be shared. That's not confidential, but just to get an idea of the types of things that are being discussed, I think that would be really helpful to understand directly what kids are saying, what they're thinking, what their suggestions are. Oh, I thought it was really interesting in the data that there weren't many, but some of the people who were stopped were perceived to have mental health concerns. So after the interaction is complete, is there responsibility on that officer to do something about the mental health concern that's happening right then?
By all means, Lieutenant.
I think if they observe that concern right there that needs immediate follow-up, then yes, they will do something, whether that's calling a mental health professional to help right then.
Okay.
There's multiple organizations that are at our disposal to call to help right then. If there's not, then that will still be noted, and follow-up can be done to follow up to see if they need additional services based on whatever mental health crisis they're going through.
Okay, yeah, I thought that was interesting, what happens then? And then, do you guys have any more detail? There were so many policy complaint data. I mean, there weren't that many complaints to begin with, right? But the bulk of things, the nature of things were policy. Can you shed any light on what kinds of policy things? Was there any
I
trend
can't
there?
speak to the specifics. There was
Okay.
not a trend, but
Okay,
if you did not complete a jail search after someone was brought out of a cell, for example, that would be a policy violation.
okay,
If you did not, handle a patrol car in a way that allowed it to be readily available for the next person to use, that could be a
That's a
policy
policy.
violation.
okay,
So it's a broad range of topics. We have a lot of policies that dictate a lot of behavior.
right.
But in general, it is like a performance-based area that fell short of what our expectations and our requirements are.
So are policy violations typically reported internally?
I would say typically. yeah.
Typically, because I don't know if I know all, I suppose I could find it somewhere privy to policies that MVPD runs by. But so typically it would be an internal concern that's expressed.
I think in general, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I really think I'm done.
I have two more if I could.
That'll give me more time.
I wanted to piggyback off of one of Tavita's questions, which is, I'm interested in knowing in the student advisory council at the school, if do they have regular council meetings, like a student body meeting? Or are they offering their council one-to-one? And also, I doubt that you know these answers now. So, and then also, how are they collecting their intelligence for reporting in these meetings? Are they just expected to go out and, talk to students one-to-one? Are there student events where, these folks are engaged with larger student body? I just would be really interested in how that process works.
It's a very interesting question. I have met with this group unrelated as Superintendent Meyer brought them to a challenge team meeting to talk about stressors and concerns of youth in general in our schools. And they are very much a broad kind of representation of our student body. And not that ASB is not, but ASB is everybody who wants to be an ASB.
Right.
And they are really targeted for both being willing, but also really representing very broad perspectives from within the student body and having those, the desire to share that. They were pretty insightful as to what they had, but the exact process, I don't know what the superintendent has in place. It's something we can inquire about, but they are hand selected by her.
And then finally, for the lieutenants, so can you describe what the level of distress for a citizen or someone that an officer might encounter that might trigger a larger response? So is talking to yourself or what is it that says to an officer? I understand that this might be in a case by case basis, but what is it that to an officer that says this person may need more resources in this moment versus encountering a person noting that they're okay, but definitely someone who has a mental health issue, but they're comfortable with leaving that person alone.
I can take it. I think, like you said, I think it's situation dependent.
Okay.
There are certain things in terms of where we're required by law to take action, which I'm sure you're probably aware of in terms of if they are a danger to themselves or a danger to others or gravely disabled. So those situations, we have to take action. The other situations, I think it just depends on what is going on and then would trigger what kind of resources we can provide them. We provide all the time voluntary things for them just to give them the information, but it just depends on the severity of what's going on to trigger kind of what action we take. We can go a few different avenues. Obviously, the one required by law is we have to in that situation, which those are the true crisis. But the other situations, it just depends. And I think it's that we try to get them as many resources as we can to get them the help. And if it's right then we'll do whatever we need to do to get it for them right then. If it's follow up with them the next day or two, we have staff that can do follow up. So we do the best we can, just depending on what the gravity of the situation is.
And every officer is equipped with all of those resources, or at least someone to ask on site, how to provide.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Member Ayar?
Really quick, I was like.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. No, really quick. Just a request to have, for RIPA data, the previous 2 quarters included so that in these reports, just so we can just compare. And then, my understanding is in addition to FLAC and LCAC, that there is, a new advisory board for, about vehicle residents. I'm wondering if that's the case and if you can say anything more about that.
It is being created actively now with members. The intent is to create a board that represents the interests and needs of those who live in vehicles in the city of Mountain View. So our kind of vehicle living community, if you will. There are 3 members of the community that have already accepted an invitation, and I have a number of other requests that need to go out. So I don't have an acronym yet. I've worked with a couple of acronyms and I don't like any of them, so I'll likely ask this group for some ideas.
Grab.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe perhaps we won't come up with it now. If that's-
Just trying it out.
Acronyms are precarious when done in public. So I'm excited for this opportunity. There are a lot of people that are very passionate to support our community that are living in vehicles and to support this group and provide feedback. The goal will really to be to find out how best we are serving the community, what areas we are, failing to meet, what problems are arising within that community, barriers to access to the police department, and also public safety concerns. Certainly, it's not. It doesn't have to be painted into a corner about a small aspect. And I'd like the group to be able to evolve and develop depending on the needs as they evolve and develop.
Great. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Ooh, just one more. Are we concerned at all about, I just want to make sure that the folks who are living in their vehicles, like if they need help, they can call for help without being concerned that they're also going to get kicked off the street for asking for help. Is that, do we have is there some kind of guarantee or some kind of process that sort of eliminates that fear for them? Because I've met the officer who she goes out and meets that community and she's amazing. Yeah, she's awesome. And I feel like most of that community knows her, but they don't necessarily know other officers who aren't in her, working with her directly. So how do you settle that fear?
If the initial question of, is there concern? Absolutely. I'm always concerned about barriers to access to a police department. And quite frankly, even if we have eliminated barriers for a long period of time, there are new people coming into the community that those barriers have not been eliminated from. We may not have placed them, but we need to move them. But it is more than just Jenlia McPherson, our exceptional community outreach officer. There is a robust team that Thomas as well, additional staff at the city manager's office that works with our community-based organizations that really work to strive for engagement and connection in identifying problems and finding solutions for our unhoused or unstably housed community. But it is ongoing work that is never done. Like cleaning a stable, we always need to be doing this work. But it is actively, it is work that is in progress.
Thank you. Okay, I'm done, sorry.
I was just thinking, I've never cleaned a stable before. Anyway, any other comments?
I guess maybe I could do one more.
Okay, Member Langton.
With regards to the RIPA data, in general, I guess it says the data is recorded for each stop. Is it really every stop? Like, yeah,
Not all police contact requires a RIPA data entry. The only ones that require it are whether a detention was made, when someone is free to leave, or a search is conducted. So if none of those were met, then a RIPA entry is not required.
so like a traffic citation.
Traffic, yes, that is required because a traffic stop is a detention. So that is required.
Okay.
So the common one would be if I walked up to somebody, just asked to talk with them, said hi, maybe got their information, everything, did not search them, and then they went about the rest of their day, that does not require RIPA entry.
Okay,
Even if that's a call for service, the same thing.
and then all the force-related actions by the officer during the stop. How many, does that include, like, say, a pat frisk, like a non-consensual search?
Rephrase that again for me.
So like, one of the data points is all of the force-related actions taken by the officer during the stop. So I'm kind of stuck on like non-consensual searches. Like, that would only be recorded if there was an enforcement action taken? Like, would that be under that data point? Like,
There is data collected about what kind of force was used in a certain situation. So there is those data points on a RIPA entry. So whatever level or whatever action was taken by the officer would be recorded for that RIPA entry stop. Does that answer your question?
I think so. So in general, most, like a non-consensual search of any kind is probably recorded if it's required to be reported.
Lieutenant Crump, can you clarify what types of searches, whether consensual or unconsensual, require a RIPA entry?
Yeah, it's any type of search requires a RIPA entry.
Okay.
So if it's consensual or non-consensual, it requires a RIPA entry. So the way we look at it is any detention and or any search of any kind.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we done? I don't know.
That's my question. Any other comments? Okay, no judgments about any number of comments here. I am just doing my due diligence. Anyway, thank you, Lieutenant, for your report, and thank you, Chief Canfield. We are now going to move on to 5.2 best practices in bias/extreme views in policing. Police Chief Mike Canfield will present this item.
Thank you, Vice Chair. As the board likely recalls, this is an item that has been brought back for further conversation and to answer questions that were posed related to timing and kind of the deliverables, if you will. So just for a little bit of background, this was a work plan item in 22-23. It was approved by City Council in the September 13th meeting for your fiscal year work plan. In November 17th, this first presentation was presented to the PSAB, and during that on extremism in policing. And during that presentation, a ad hoc committee was formed. That ad hoc committee consisted of Vice Chair Tang, Member Frink, and Member Sandu at the time. When Member Sandu completed his service to the community and to City Council, his position was filled by Member Souter, which was greatly appreciated. The presentation was given to PSAB by the ad hoc committee and by staff on October 26th of last year. And the recommendations were accepted unanimously by the PSAB. However, there was both a request for follow-up on timelines and deliverables, and also an adjustment made in the one of the items that I'll cover further, but it was about reporting frequency and details related to bias misconduct that was sustained during investigations. And with that, I would like to take us into our 7 recommendations. Now, some of these recommendations have you know, A, B, and C, but they're numbered 1 through 7. The first one is MVPD should continue to comply with existing city, post, legal, and legislative requirements regarding training, hiring, and investigations of misconduct. This is ongoing and continuous work, to be clear. We were consistent with those requirements, but we need to maintain that consistency, and that requires us to attend significant levels of training about legislative updates, SB2 and SB2 and SB 1421, which relate to both officer decertification and the sharing of and making public of significant internal affairs investigations. Those are new but very important legislation. CLEAR Act training, and as well as internal affairs investigations. But additionally, we sent, officers and accompanied Human Resources Department to that types of training, and looked at training related to hiring and recruiting of officers, which tangentially relates to that topic or other topics that will be covered. So this is ongoing and continuous. Item number 2 was that MVPD should ensure a focus on recruiting and training qualified applicants who represent the diversity of Mountain View. And A was to develop a formal MVPD recruiting plan that addresses recruiting efforts that represent the diversity of our community. This is anticipated completion by the end of this calendar year. I'm optimistic that it will be completed sooner. In fact, we onboarded staff specifically with the intent, a new position of creating manuals and training plans that would be very consistent with this. Due to some unforeseen staffing shifts, that staff is right now filling of another kind of needed void internally. However, I anticipate that they will be back to addressing these issues in the next couple of months. And although there are a lot of priorities, certainly this is a priority as well for that staff member. And number B is to develop a process for monitoring data on the diversity of applicants, new hires, and existing personnel. This is anticipated to launch, if you will, in May of 2024. So the city of Mountain View has been using a portal or a company called CalOps, and CalOps allows us to do our recruiting and hiring processes through this system. It's where you'd submit an application, you put in your personal information, you'd put your resume, et cetera. They have, there is data collection related to applicants. However, we are moving away from CalOps to another vendor, another service, NeoGov, and NeoGov has significantly better and more robust data collection capabilities. This is being done obviously not by Mountain View PD, but by our Human Resources Department. That Human Resources Department is, they found it, picked it, and selected it, but of course it takes time to onboard and to roll out. They're going to do a test, and speaking with Human Resources, they're going to do a test pilot where they do their, before we get rid of the legacy system, we're going to practice one on the new system. And so I am optimistic about the types of data that we'll be able to collect. However, I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but certainly age, gender, and ethnicity are categories, and likely, veteran status are categories that we can collect. It will be anonymized from the applicants. So that wouldn't be something that we would see when we're vetting a candidate. But as far as who is applying and addressing these issues, that is something that will create a lot more data. We'll be able to use this data to see the efficacy of our recruiting efforts. And again, that's May of this year. Item 2, MVPD should ensure a focus on recruiting and training qualified applicants who represent the diversity of Mountain View. And C is incorporate the feedback from the LCAC and the FLAC, the Faith Leaders Advisory Committee, to inform the recruiting plan, hiring process, and department training. This, certainly will, part of that will go with the training plan, but also parts of this are in place now. So we have the hiring process and our training, we have essentially a member from the faith leaders, and actually in this circumstance, it happens to be from both organizations, faith leaders and the LCAC, who is supporting the department and will be actually present at the hiring process, at the oral board conversations to help inform that process. So they've volunteered to be there to speak to our panel, to discuss the needs and things that are important to the community as a whole from their perspective. So it's both, again, with the training plan, so when the training plan component is complete, but also ready and active now. We're going letter, D. David, it's to formalize in-house training with new and lateral officers to improve cultural appreciation of our diverse community and the values of the city and department and the culture of the MVPD as a community partner. Our newest officers are in their in-house training right now, and those officers will be meeting with Father Walter from St. Athanasius to talk about both expectations of the police officers in the community, but also the value and importance of these connections. So I'm excited that this is the first round of in-house officers that will have that opportunity. I am also personally very much looking forward to meeting with this group of in-house officers to discuss our values and the importance of them and the connections that we have with our community and how essential they are to providing public safety. That is now built in by design into all of the in-house, our 4-week in-house training plan or program. So when an officer completes the academy, before they go out into the field, into field training, they're in an additional 4-week in-house training. I believe it's longer than everybody else's in-house training, quite frankly, but it gives us a better opportunity to engage and have our officers understand who they are and who Mountain View Police Department is and what the Mountain View way is, if you will. So it's well worth that time delay. Number 3 is that MVPD should prioritize the assessment of an applicant's ability to work with MVPD's diverse community by incorporating questions designed to gauge cultural competency into the hiring process. This is completed by the next entry-level interviews. So this is actively being worked on by the Human Resources Department and who runs our hiring processes and our Personnel and Training Division. I'm excited to see those questions, but I can tell you it is also in place in my interviews. And since our meeting in October, I have in every conversation, in an executive interview with every officer hired, incorporated questions both to gauge their understanding, but also to share the importance of our relationship and our place as part of the community, not policing the community. And I found that to be very rewarding. So I'm thankful to the board for the recommendation. And that, thankfully, because a chief's interview is less rote and less structured, it can be a little bit more engaging in dialogue. That's been going since the next interview after that meeting in October. And A is that MVPD should consider inviting Chiefs Advisory Committee members or other community stakeholders to meet with hiring panels and the police chief to provide input on the characteristics and qualities they desire. This is, again, this is in place for our next group of hires. So our next oral board entry-level folks or lateral folks, that panel that interviews them first, that gets to see who they are and decide if they move forward or not, they will have that conversation. Again, this is in place already from a chief's input perspective, but as far as that entry level, this is, we have not done it. It is now onboarded as a process and formally created. So it will be there for the next group of hires, which we anticipate in May, but I have to say those numbers shift depending on how many applicants apply. Really dictates how long we leave a process open, but I believe this should be in May. Number 4 is MVPD should continue to seek and grow opportunities for community engagement and to use those opportunities to promote awareness of the diversity of Mountain View for all officers in the department, providing valuable connections and insights into our unique Mountain View community. This is in place now, but we are working to collect better data about these types of engagement opportunities. So I can say that we have had a number of fantastic community engagement opportunities since we last met. Everything from coffee with a cop or cocoa with a cop at our senior center, our annual food giveaway, which is Cops and Gobblers, a toy giveaway for underserved kids, Cops That Care program, Spanish language leadership MVPD night. Those were made available and will continue to be made available to as much staff as reasonably able to participate. And they were very heavily attended by our staff, by a broad range of our staff, which makes me very happy. It's important that we continue to provide this access, but it is in place. We will have better data about the number of these events as we move forward. I don't know that I'll be able to collect data on how many officers are showing up, but we very much are committed to making access an opportunity for all of our officers that can attend. There are logistics in place and there are questions about overtime and things that always need to be sorted out, but very much so the attendance at these events reflects the intention of the department and the desire for our community, our department to participate. Question 5, or rather recommendation that was adopted, number 5. MVPD should continue to survey our community to assess effectiveness of communication and solicit feedback on the department's performance and look for areas of disparity amongst our diverse population. Seek to provide those survey tools in the languages predominantly spoken in the Mountain View community. This is, as you heard in the presentation, this is very much a reflective in the My90 tool. This is our predominant way of gauging that information, and it is in fact in the language in which folks use their devices, their mobile devices. Thankfully, that's a setting that company has. But they also have a survey tool for specific events. So we can have a QR code or something that they scan or a place that they go if they attend a Cocoa with a Cop or a Champurrado with the police, et cetera. And that will give us a better idea, but also National Night Out or other engagement opportunities to see how effective we are. Included in that, we have the ability to design these and to see if, look for areas of opportunity for access, if there's enough Spanish language officers, those types of questions are things that we can customize to the different types of events that we go to. Recommendation number 6 is that MVPD should continue to work with their vendors whose products cover use of force, pursuit driving, complaints, and customer satisfaction to identify opportunities to adopt systems designed to identify potential issues or patterns of conduct and provide early opportunities for intervention and training. This is essentially the red flag systems that integrate with our use of force review complaint data systems. And one of the reasons we like the Axon standards format that we use is that it is an integrated system where ideally these systems can start to communicate. And they are actively working on red flag systems, but they are not present now. And as much as I would like to give you a timeline, I don't have one. And once it's available, we do need to evaluate it to make sure it's the right product. I don't want to just onboard with something that doesn't work well or doesn't fit our organizational needs, but I am committed to reviewing that product as soon as it's available or looking at other products that are collaborative with the systems in place or the systems that we have. But right now, I don't have a good system in place. And speaking with other police executives, I'm not familiar with a great system that people think that we need to onboard, not getting phone calls or texting, you've got to check this system out. Yeah, I suspect that with more data, and more computer power, that will come. So I would just ask that you stand by, but I will let you know. And then number 7 is that MVPD should continue to report data allegations of bias misconduct to the PSAB and include a specific notification in the twice yearly reports on Mountain View Police Department performance and feedback data to PSAB if such allegations are sustained. Now, as the board recalls, although it will be in the twice yearly reporting, the expectation or the request that was approved was that the board would be notified not just in the twice yearly, but at the subsequent PSAB meeting after the completion of the investigation, which is absolutely something that the police department that I personally am committed to doing. So that has been amended. So you will receive, upon the completion of the investigation, you will receive notification prior to a twice yearly reporting. It will also be included in the twice yearly reporting, of course, because it's incorporated into that data. But also, that was brought up, I believe it was by Vice Chair Tang, was to include the nature of the allegation, the findings of the investigation, and the discipline administered. And that is something that we're committed to sharing as well. And that would come at that same interval frequency of next meeting after we call a special meeting, but the next meeting after the investigation is completed, it would be brought up by myself or other police department members. That concludes all of the updates on your recommendations, but open to any questions.
All right, so questions from the board before I open this item to public comment. Maria, anything else? No,
I do, but I could wait for you.
you go first this time.
No, you.
But then I can steal some of your stuff.
Okay, cool. All right. I have a question about the training. So a new applicant, let's just say it's a fresh younger or somebody who's just gone through academy. So they've gone through how many ever months of academy training, and then they come here, they have 4 weeks of training, and then they have another 4 weeks of in-house training. Is that?
Oh, no.
No?
Oh,
Okay.
no, Chair Frank, or Member Frank. They do a 6 to 7 month police academy.
Right.
A 4-week in-house training, and then they go into just shy of 6 months of field training, probably five and change of field training.
Okay. Okay, I think that, so what I was getting at is, with respect to the cultural integration into our community and getting to know our community and the culture of our community, that's a lot of information. And so how do you guys sort of reinforce that, so that it's not just all dumped on them this one time and then it's not revisited and they're just sort of expected to remember all of that? Like, do you have a sort of an ongoing process, maybe even that everybody can sort of participate in, that reinforces that sort of bond to the community?
Yeah, I can tell you that that community interaction is something that is evaluated by a field training officer in all of that process. So throughout their kind of practical hands-on, they're in a patrol car. That is something that's being evaluated continuously. Their tone, the manner in which they interact, the respect that they provide to our community. Are they seeing themselves as kind of an us against them mentality, which is a term that used to be used a lot, not used so much anymore. But at the beginning of the field training program, it's very much a very hands-on. Much of the work is done by that field training officer. And as it progresses, that field training officer models less and does less and watches more until by the end of that process, the shadow phase, is what we call it, that officer is functioning completely solo. All of their actions throughout that entire field training process are evaluated and documented in great detail. In addition to having an officer worn camera on during their required interactions, which are almost all of our interactions. So those are very well watched and viewed, and then the officer steps back and the field training officer steps back and the new officer does that work themselves, and it continues to be evaluated. Even upon that completion, once a recruit passes or a new officer passes field training, they're still on probation and they get monthly evaluations from the sergeant, but they also get a lot of support from their peers who are watching and helping them, but also addressing issues if they come up. But their sergeants are very much hands-on in observing their behavior and showing up to their calls and being engaged and watching how they're performing in a very complex job with high expectations.
Right. And you mentioned the body-worn cameras. Do you guys review for officers on probation? Do you review all of their footage, or the training officers?
No, we don't
Okay.
review all of their footage.
Gotcha.
If there's a concern or a problem, then we will. If there's a deficit or an area for improvement, that's something we could look at. But no, we don't just sit and kind of mine through our officer one camera. I think it would undermine the trust that our officers have in the administration and that I have in the officers. Certainly, we need to be able to look at officer one camera. But I don't believe that we need to continuously monitor everything that's going on with all of our officers all the time. We really have phenomenal people that do phenomenal work, and I'm very proud of it.
And then just a question about when you were talking about the sharing when there are complaints and that you wanted to try to share the complaint and so forth, you're actually able to share the discipline that's enforced for
So
those?
in this case, based on that SB 1421, those types of sustained bias investigation is subject to public disclosure. So I would not be disclosing, I could not disclose something that I'm not allowed to, and I certainly don't want to go into a deep dive on an officer's investigation. We will make it public, and the board and anyone else can take a look at the details of that and their specifics. But it is important, I think, in Vice Chair Tang represented probably a pretty significant interest to at least have a high-level summary so that folks will know, oh, okay, now I want to go take a look and make a request and examine this, or this doesn't rise to the level of concern for me, or I feel that it's being handled appropriately. Just to reassure and to provide that transparency from the police department.
Thank you. That's for me.
Thank you, Member Shrink. Member York.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I've got groups of questions. I want to talk about new officers working with diverse communities. So I think it's great that they're talking to Father Walter, or after, well, that's after they get hired, that there is somebody from the community, from the board sitting on the interview panels.
That's not,
Did
to
I
be
not
clear,
misunderstand?
yes,
Okay.
they will be speaking, they will sit with the interview panel, discuss those things
Okay,
with that panel, and then that panel will go and do the interviews.
okay,
I like that concept until you look at the realities of hiring and the requirements for training for folks to sit on boards. And it's not practical for us to have, a really diverse group of different people coming and going and sitting on our boards. The recommendation was to find a place that both meets the organizational needs of a city and the continuity of expectations that human resources would expect, but also those connections to the community. So bringing to instruct and help talk to the board is what the member will be doing.
what the member would be doing. Is that member privy to the questions that are asked to assess cultural competency?
Likely, I would need to ask human resources, but my suspicion is that the answer is no, because it's a confidential hiring process that we don't share the questions. So likely not, but if human resources would allow questions to be shared, it's certainly something that we could consider. Or we can consider sharing them once they've been completed. We if they're not in use anymore, and we've moved on to some new questions, those are things that we could consider using.
I would be curious if those questions are externally vetted beyond the city of Mountain View, with people who have that expertise in determining cultural competencies. So I guess that's my question.
So
If not with the member of the board, then how do we know that those are the right questions for cultural competency? Because HR in and of itself, having worked in corporate for years, doesn't necessarily know. A lot of the times you need external vetting of those types of questions, and I'd be curious about that if that happens.
I would tell you that I don't believe that the questions are intended or have been vetted for externally from members of the community. What I think is maybe a sweet spot in the middle would be to get themes and content from members of the community that they want integrated into the questions. That seems like an area where we can design questions still within this kind of, sanctuary of confidentiality that.
Without getting into the
needs.
specific
Right,
questions.
so someone would not end up walking into a process and knowing something that someone else would not, but would still address those concerns. So that is absolutely, and that thankfully we have a little bit of time, but I love that idea, and that's something that we can, it's great.
And then what priority does MVPD place on? You can ask questions about cultural competency, but what about the actual experience that a lateral hire, for example, might have working with diverse communities? How important is that to MVPD?
I think it's not just diverse communities, but certainly diverse communities is fantastic. I think it's important, but also the way that our applicants interact with people, how they see people as human beings, how they build bonds and connect, how they see their role as an officer in the community. And that is a question, it's not a secret. That's a question I'll ask on every executive interview. I want to know how they see themselves in their role and what an officer should do within a community. May, depending on the kind of dialogue and conversation, may come up in a few different ways, but I really want to know how they see police officers in the city of Mountain View functioning. What is their role and what is their purpose?
Okay, cool. Then my second set of questions is around success. How do you measure it when, I imagine that the PD can't have specific targets for moving X number of diverse hires, but you're trying to be representative of the community you're all working in. So what paths are there for MVPD to measure success in diverse hiring? What options are available to you?
So I think that the goal is really in, and I would probably have to punt something like that specifically as you're phrasing it over to human resources for the best way, because to answer, but what I'm hoping for and what I expect is in our ability to broaden the access of our recruiting, not so that I can have a specific demographic of hire. That's definitely not the goal. But what I want is as many people as possible, and people that perhaps we may not have reached before, and find the best people from in each of those demographics. I know it's what the board wants. It's what I want, is to get the greatest people to protect the city of Mountain View as possible. And I wholeheartedly believe that broadening our spectrum of recruiting will expand the number of people that we can pick from. And I'll pick the best people, regardless of any of the demographics. But I think if we recruit really broadly, we'll find more broad scope of great people. So I think that can be accomplished by exceptional recruiting.
So perhaps a success metric might be if you're continuing to go more broadly, or if more people are interested in applying, or those types of metrics might be indicative of that you're reaching a broader audience, and perhaps by doing that, getting a broader base, a broader diversity of applicants. Is that fair?
Absolutely, yes. And I think also the number of applicants. And then if we can measure, and hopefully the new software can, the number of applicants from the different types of recruiting events, how they ended up coming to apply to MVPD. That will be a very good way to gauge if the areas, the energy that we're putting into the specific type of recruiting is working, or if we need to retool and reapply those efforts and those resources to different recruiting efforts.
Okay, thank you. Still on that theme of success, how do you measure success of community engagement? I don't know if I heard this right, that My90 might be used for community surveys?
Correct. So My90 has a function that this is what I want to utilize to gauge the community connection and the efficacy of these community engagement activities. So the ability to customize a survey will likely have something that will be a broad one that we can apply to numerous engagement activities, but then also be able to take a customized survey for a specific event. So for example, the Spanish Language Leadership Academy. So that's very kind of unique, bespoke group of people that I don't want to use a standard, maybe neighborhood association type survey for. I want to know, really, did we meet their unique needs? Do they feel that the group was able to communicate with them effectively? So things to think about, but certainly there are going to be different things that we need to gauge and understand to see if we did a good job and we had the right people, or we answered the right questions, or we were prepared enough to answer the questions at the time.
Right.
So My90 has a survey tool for that, and I'm excited to start implementing it.
Okay, cool. Do you anticipate the results of those will start to percolate into the twice yearly report to PSAP?
Yes, I don't see why we would not be sharing that. I don't know if it's going to be interesting enough, for a broad spectrum. So certainly be open to feedback if it's desired or not desired, but at a minimum for us, it will let us know if we're doing a good job with the community events that we're doing or areas
Right.
for growth in those.
Well, I'm hopeful that perhaps it'll help kind of get that representation from the community bumped up a bit. Versus the traditional I-90, which felt like it was skewed to one population. So I'd be interested. I'm not sure about everybody else. Thank you.
There are questions from.
No,
Are you competing?
no, just as he speaks, I just have other things that come up because it's just a lot of good stuff. Is it, you sure?
Oh, wait, is that a hand member? Oh, okay,
Yes.
just checking.
Oh, no?
I go first.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, yeah, you do, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm curious, what percentage of the people you recruit for the Mountain View Police Department are entry level? And what percent are at a higher, more experienced level?
For the recruiting or the hiring specifically?
Hiring is probably a better.
You know, I don't have numbers offhand, and I'd certainly be open to, for a lifeline from any of the lieutenants present. But I can tell you that it does go in waves. So we have had times when we've had, 2 or 3 or 4 laterals come in kind of back to back to back, and we can take them at any time because they don't need to go through an academy that has specific structured timelines. So that can always change. But we tend to do like chunks of hiring more at once of new hire that are entry level. And we have more entry level than laterals now. That's been the recent trend in the last year and a half, is more entry level officers than lateral officers. They're both provide a really essential component for our needs. It's fantastic to get skilled, talented, great officers that just step out of their car and they know what to do. It's also wonderful to have people who grow up in the Mountain View Police Department, perhaps are explorers and come up through our Dreams and Futures programs and our mentoring programs and then become explorers and our officers. That's invaluable as well and has long-term implications for organizational success that I value very much.
But a newbie has to have come from a police academy or not?
Yeah, so.
Hire and then send to the academy?
So they can, a new hire could place themselves through a police academy and then apply to us. Or they can apply as an entry-level applicant who has not attended a police academy. And then we hire them and they're actually a police officer recruit. There's some nuance to it, but they're not a full officer during the academy time. It's still complete the academy and then they're sworn in. But yeah, we hire them, put them in general, put them through the academy, then swear them in as officers, and then they go into that in-house and in the field training program.
Thank you.
Haven't gone yet. Any questions?
Like all kinds of hands over here. What happened to them?
I know you have something.
Wow. It's all you. I don't have anything.
Really?
Oh.
Okay. May I?
Yeah.
I just have a question about, and I don't know if am I allowed to ask you a question here?
I'd like to ask me.
Yeah.
Of course.
So just my question about the HR part of the question providing for the recruits. And it's just like, I just want to make sure that if we're talking about providing a set of questions that honor the diversity of the community, that the person or the people or the group that's creating those questions also represent the diversity of the community? And like, do we have an assurance that that's the case in this particular?
I can't speak for HR, and in fact, we have a brand new HR director who will certainly be taking a set of fresh eyes, looking at various programs and policies that we have in place. But we can certainly get an answer back for you from HR that really is their purview, the development of the questionnaires. I know as the chief highlighted, they are usually kept confidential within the HR sphere or the recruiter if we have one involved. So there's some sensitivity there, but I do know that our HR is committed and uses that lens. I just don't know the particulars of what that process would be. So the chief and I will flag that and we'll get some feedback from HR for you.
Thank you.
You bet.
And secondly, I just out of curiosity, can you tell me just a ballpark or about how many languages are spoken within the department from sworn officers? So these are people that are on the street that are and interacting with the community. Any idea?
You know, it's interesting that of the 4 new officers that are in-house and one in the academy. So 5 total, 4 of them speak Spanish, 1 of them speaks Khmer, which is the language of Cameroon. No, I'm sorry, I apologize, not Cameroon, Cambodia. But we also have Hindi speakers, a few different Chinese dialects. Yeah, certainly Tagalog, perhaps Ilocano, Japanese, Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese.
No Russian speaker?
I know we have an Arabic speaker, a Farsi speaker.
Jeez.
It's actually something that
That one.
it's funny that you mention it, Member Flynn, because it came up, another agency referenced some of the languages they speak in the department, and it really made me think I want just to have a more comprehensive list. We do for translation services,
Sure.
but not for these types of conversations. But it is, American Sign Language.
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
But yeah, there are a number of languages that are spoken within the department, and that is something that I love to see in an applicant. It's fantastic to see applicants who speak different languages that help support the public safety needs of the community. It's absolutely a huge plus, an absolute plus.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like that's like where I met Captain Yeager was at an event in the school. That year at the school, there was like 70 some odd languages being spoken at the school, and it's always a topic, that if you could have that, that is a cultural component of the department that you can be really proud of. So anyway, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? I have a couple of my own. They're just clarifying questions. For the culturally competent questions or the questions in general that were included. I understand that you possibly included them in the chief's interviews just from like a timeline standpoint, so you could implement them faster. And so I had the question, like, are they gonna be codified? Because it also said to be included in next interview, right? So that means that they will be codified? Like as opposed to like, because I assume for chief's interviews, it's kind of like at the chief's discretion, so like.
Yeah, perhaps I should clarify the process a little bit better as well. So applicants have to get through an initial oral board or interview process by a panel. Those questions are drafted and provided to that panel by HR, and those are the questions that are we are working on with HR on developing questions specifically that address cultural competency and awareness. And those are the questions that Member AR was recommending that we surmise that we should be reaching out to get some themes and content, although those questions would still need to be drafted through that same formal process. The conversation that I have and the interview that I have in the executive interview is the title that we use. Those conversations they're maybe less designed specifically about cultural competency and more about cultural understanding and the standing and the belief of the standing of an officer as it relates to their position in our community and how that fits. And how they see an officer's position within the community and what they know about our community. So they're certainly related, but they are different conversations or different questions.
Yes, sorry, I understand that part. My question was more about, it sounded like you had included them already in the chief's interviews that you like just did. And it then also sounded like you included them in those chief interviews because you had some more discretion. But like, are they gonna be codified to be included in those like panel interviews in the future?
Yes, that is the work that is actively in progress. So that was the date given for the May interviews. It will be completed by the May interviews. That is the process for that initial interview with a rote set of written questions. Those will be designed and implemented by that May process. That's different than the chief's conversation, but I also wanted to share with the board that those questions are being implemented in another format. And that is because they're two different interviews and with different formats, I wanted to share them.
Thank you for clarifying. Another clarifying question, is there, since you're like excited about this My 90 event survey, since like they are possibly gonna be different questions, is there a mechanism to separate like the My 90 event data from like our daily collected data from My 90?
Yes, yeah, I'm fairly confident those are completely separate silos. I think the complexity would be if we wanted to marry them somehow or overlay them on that. I don't know if we can do, but yeah, they exist in different spheres. I don't know like how all of the surveys, if we blend those. So the question will be how bespoke do we want to make them? Does it make them so different that they're hard to overlap and understand? So the goal will be probably finding that sweet spot in between of customized, so we get the information we need, but not so customized that we can't compare it from one event to another.
Oh, thank you. Opening it for public comment. Would any member of the public like to provide comment on this item? If so, please submit a blue card, or if on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9 on your phone.
We have one, Bruce England.
Hi, everybody. Bruce England speaking for MVCPRA again. Just a very quick comment. In the agenda file, which I should look at so I can tell you exactly what it says. It talks about this item being under, let's see, 5.2. Receive a follow-up presentation and timeline update for 5.2. I believe that's where we are. And we just like to see discussion or receiving input from PSAB members and the community in that description in such cases. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Any other members of the public? Seeing as there are none, I will bring this back for PSAB discussion. Any board members have comments? Member Ayer?
So Mr. England, if you can let me know what you were suggesting, I'm sorry, maybe I'm a little allergy medicined up and maybe I'm a little dense, but I'm sorry, I missed it. And I want to make sure I understand your suggestion. If you could let me know.
That makes two of us.
Okay.
It wasn't just you.
If I may clarify, I
Yes.
believe, I believe he meant like it, this is like an informational item. We're just like receiving this presentation. So the intent of his comment is we would like it to be like receive feedback as opposed to us just receiving the presentation. Does that make sense?
I believe, just for a point of clarification, Vice Chair, that because this was directed to staff to bring back with the timelines, so we were essentially given a directive to come back. I think it was initially going to be in March, but to come back and present timelines and give that follow-up information. So I think we may have been hamstrung to that format because that was the expectation, but Ms. Thomas would know a lot better than me.
Yeah, and there are various sublines that you see, which is where if it's an informational item, we can see if there is an ability to add some additional caveat language that it's for discussion and feedback dialogue, but it's a non-action item when it is informational. So the chief is taking in feedback and making notes of things that he will follow up on, but it's not a formal action item where you'll take a vote at the end of it and so on and so forth.
That would have been done in the
At your
October meeting, is that?
prior meeting.
Okay.
And so it'd be framed differently in that case.
So it's not something that requires like a motion.
No, this will not.
Other comments? I had one comment. Champurrado with police in order to keep what the alliteration should be Champurrado with the chief.
I like Champurrado with the chief.
That means that you have to commit to being there.
I can commit if the Champurrado is there.
If it's good.
I think I had half of the name of that meeting correct, and I think I probably messed the other.
That brings us, if there are no further comments, brings us to 5.3, discussion of meeting options to enhance meeting continuity. Deputy City Manager Kimberly Thomas will give a brief verbal report summarizing where this item left off at the last meeting and some options for consideration.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. You may recall at our last meeting, for those of you that were present, during the discussion of the TAL and the work plan, there was a dialogue about how the board could keep greater continuity when there's oftentimes even a month or 6 weeks gap between the meetings, and really a desire to not be disconnected during that time period. So you could quickly be up to speed when you're meeting together again. So staff took that back and we did brainstorm some options, and we'll share a slide here for you with some potential suggestions. But I did want to ensure both the chief and I, as well as Audrey would of course like to share this with you, is at any time, as long as you're complying with the Brown Act, you can converse below the Brown Act threshold with your colleagues. So we always want to make sure that you feel you consistently have that. And then we have the contact information for the group. But what we brainstormed around was mainly around the piece that now, as a part of your agendas, you will be getting consistent, regular updates on every agenda from your ad hoc committees. And so what we thought we would provide is sort of a simple frame that staff could capture each ad hoc committee's update at each meeting. We don't do in-depth minutes, we do action minutes, but by having a very simple frame as a guide both for the presenter from the ad hoc committee group, as well as for the minutes, we could easily capture the action since the last meeting, what is anticipated, because that was one of the veins we heard over and over in that discussion was, gosh, sometimes it's very difficult to understand what we said we were going to do and where we're currently at. And then in addition, we spoke with the chair and vice chair yesterday when we did agenda review, and they came up with another great ad, which was, one of the things they really would like to see each time is what is the cadence of the meetings that are following up by that ad hoc committee. So this is really just a very simple structure that could drive your now item 5.4, which is coming up next on the agenda. We at a staff level, through Michael's great resources, would capture high-level bullet points on this. That would be reflected in your minutes. And then when you're reviewing your packet, it would be like, oh my goodness, I did remember about that. You'd have a couple of notes to jog your memory and to thread that line a little bit through your meetings to make sure you've got some more continuity. So these were just staff recommendations of things that we thought would be simple. If there's other ideas that the board has, please, this item is on your agenda now for you to discuss it. And staff is concluding its report and open for feedback from you. Yes.
What is cadence?
Oh, cadence is timing. So what each ad hoc committee feels is best timing and process wise, that's what that captures.
Questions from board member Yard?
I think this is great. And I'd like to see it in action and then we can see how it goes, but I think this could help a lot. So thank you to staff.
Sure.
And chair and vice chair for coming up with these things.
And really not trying to make it overly complicated for you or for staff in the note-taking process. And you could certainly take a relook at that. If it, is it capturing quite what you wanted, and helping that through line come through? Over a couple of sessions, maybe when you're doing your next work plan, which is actually coming up quickly. You could just say, initially we think it might be working, or we'll give it a couple more months before we see.
Other questions from the board? All right, if there are no further questions, I will open it up to public comment. Would any member of the public like to provide comment on this item? If so, please submit a blue card, or if on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9 on your phone. None? Oh, okay. I will now bring this back for peace out discussion. Any comments from board members?
Do we have, oh, I'm sorry. Do we have to vote on this? Oh, okay.
Yes, a motion and a second is required for this action item.
I'd like
So
to,
moved.
oh, so moved, and then I'll second it.
Is that captured?
That is.
Okay, I believe we will take a roll call.
Yep. Here we go. Vice Chair Tang,
Yes.
Member Ayar,
Yes, please.
Member Rudowski,
Yes.
Member Frank,
Yes, please.
Member Langston.
Yes.
Sorry. it's Langston.
Yes.
And then Member Souter.
Yes.
That motion carries 6-0.
All right, thank you. We're moving on to 5.4, ad hoc committee reports. The ad hoc committees will provide updates. First would be the ad hoc committee on forum for future of community policing. And then the ad hoc committee on youth substance abuse. So a forum for future of community policing.
So, we're here, we had an email discussion. I'm assuming a slide was not created. Looking at you guys in case you happen to know, because Captain Yeager is not here and Captain McGee is not here.
I think, Member Ayar, this is just an opportunity for you to provide some high-level overview of what you've done and then maybe the next things that you're doing, but we don't have anything.
Okay, they didn't give you anything.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to check on that. I wonder if we can show that slide?
You just need to join the Zoom on your computer and you could show it.
So Derek, I was looking at the slide that Captain Yeager.
With all the data, like what they
all
were
the
gonna cover,
Different ideas.
yeah.
So we met a couple of times, and the ad hoc committees consists of myself, Member Langton, and Member Souter. And we talked about what potential topics might be bubbling to the top at these forums that we're discussing on the future of community policing. And so what we have here are some of those ideas. And also wanted to chat with you guys about what are the right days and times to have those meetings. And we can give you our thoughts and get that feedback. Does that sound okay? So, yeah. Okay. So, while Member Souter is bringing it up, we did talk about days, and we thought it was important that we had both weekdays and weekends in the mix to allow people with different schedules to participate. So we talked about having a meeting like on a Thursday evening, for example, but also have a forum on a Saturday or Sunday, kind of in the morning timeframe, if I recall correctly. And Member Langton, do you recall, because I don't have it in front of me, do you recall if it's, do we make 2 evening dates and 1 weekend date?
I'm trying to look through my emails,
Thank
but,
you. Sorry, I'm going from memory.
yeah, I do. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it was 2 evenings and 1 weekend.
So we thought about that. We thought about location, and I believe Captain Yeager or Captain McGee was reaching out to the school districts to see about having the forums in a neutral place, like a high school, like a school. So that people wouldn't feel triggered in any way or uncomfortable in any way, to go to the police station. I know there was a request from MVPD to do one of the events at the police station. And I thought that was a good discussion topic. Because we want people to feel safe. And so doing it at the police station is something I think we need to consider carefully, even if it's just one of 3. Okay.
What about Ringstorf?
Or at the community center could be another option, for sure. We thought schools, because, well, there's space and also people are used to going there, so. And maybe there's a sense of safety around schools, I'm not sure, but we thought that might be an option.
But we also think like just different, not everything at the same place would help geography wise, or
Yeah.
if you'd get other people attending.
Exactly. Okay,
Okay,
you wanna walk through these topics? Or-
I sure can, and I'm sorry, I was trying to figure this out, so if I repeat what you just said, just feel like I already covered that. So. I'm so sorry, I don't have any idea what you had just said.
So I, while you were doing that, members outer, I was,
Oh, okay, super, thank you.
yeah.
You're Jen.
We've gone over kind of, that we would have at different locations.
Mhm.
And then also at like, we would also have a mix of weekday evenings
Mhm.
and weekend mornings to try and adapt to people's different schedules. And then I think, you have the opportunity now to talk about the different topics that kind of bubbled to the top for us.
Okay, well, apologies to everybody who is watching this unravel. We were very organized during our meetings, contrary to what it seems like right now. So the topics that we have considered moving forward with the forums is covering shoplifting and crime. Since that is a significant concern for retailers in our community. And then just crime in general, including theft, assault, and anything that may fall under that umbrella. The second one would be the response strategies and homelessness, and the issues related to that. Community members have expressed interest in homeless response strategy and to seek more collaboration with law enforcement. The third one is the patrol strategies and community engagement, where business owners have desired a stronger connection with beat cops, quote unquote, patrolling downtown, emphasizing the importance of personal engagement and familiarity. Suggestions would be also improving the presence of visibility of officers and exploring ways to avoid overreactions in emergency situations. And I just want to make sure that everybody sees this as well, because my screen's kind of split up. The fourth one would be interaction with diverse communities and populations, where community members request better understanding and support for individuals with disabilities, suggesting a system for self-identification to first aid responders. Also within that is concerns raised about police interactions with neurodiverse individuals, such as those with hearing or vision impairments, or those with autism. The fifth one is firearms violence and police recruitment, where we have questions about local police authority and controlling firearms without legislation. Community members expressing concerns about excessive police violence and inquire about strategies to identify officers at risk of losing control. The sixth one.
Might I interrupt you for a second?
Absolutely.
I'm not, sorry, just to go into the unraveling
Mhm.
thing a little deeper.
Yeah.
I don't I'm not sure what you're reading from, but I don't
That is-
think that's what Captain Yeager summarized.
Well, those are certainly,
Sorry, guys.
oh, you know what this was? I believe some of this was community feedback when we had reached out to the other groups to see if they had.
Right.
So
I-
that's what that is.
I think we should probably focus on the ones that kind of bubble to the top.
Yeah, I would love to do that for
Okay.
everybody. Okay, so
So I think one big topic is about homelessness and vulnerable
Right.
population response strategies. How has the PD historically approached this group? What lessons have we learned? How are the partnerships working between the PD and the community-based organizations? What is the role of police in how do you police homeless, right? What does that mean? And how could that partnership, what does it look like going forward? Because obviously we have a large population of unstably housed people in the city. How does that work with policing, right? And being curious about that, what it looks like now, what it has looked like in the past, and what it might look like going forward. That was a whole big thing that we were interested in looking at. The second area was around community safety, crime prevention, and accountability, both from a technology perspective and also from a what does crime look like and what will it look like in the future? The concern about this one, right, is I don't know that we want to get into a regurgitation of crime statistics. I think there's an opportunity for different neighborhoods in Mountain View to interact with the police department and get that for their specific neighborhood. This is about the future of community policing. So I think technology is interesting, right? Like what kinds of technologies are the police thinking about? What concerns might private citizens have about those technologies? And then what's the future of crime gonna look like, right? So I don't necessarily want to advocate going through the number of packages stolen. I don't know if that's the forum for this. We're talking about the future of community policing. So what do future crimes look like and how can individual residents be empowered to protect themselves, right? That could be a future looking item. So that was kind of bucket number 2. Bucket number 3 is around partnerships. So when we're talking about community policing, inherent in that term, I believe, is the idea of partnerships between the community and the police department. So what does that look like now? What could it look like? What are the opportunities with community interactions and partnering? And I think as part of that too is kind of getting a measure of where the public feels maybe police response could be decreased or is not needed, right? We've already explored that in terms of urgent mental health response. Are there other areas that doesn't mean we're going to change anything, but that the public feels, I'm wondering if that can be handled somewhere else and free our police department to do these more important things, right? So there's a whole interesting area in there, in partnerships. And finally, youth engagement, police and youth, we have the whole SRO program on campus, off campus. What does that program look like as it's evolving? Are there other opportunities besides the current set of programs for police to engage with youth? So these are the 4 big sections that we, after discussion amongst ourselves, getting input from different community groups, we split up the groups and went out and asked, these are the ones that are bubbling to the top. So I'll stop talking there. Derek, Deva, do you have other things to add to these sections?
I don't necessarily have anything to add as far as the sections. That's kind of what I see in our last email. But I will say overall, I think we wanted to have a theme of not necessarily educating people that they should just pick up the phone and call the police, but what they can kind of do for themselves.
There's an empowerment
Yeah.
angle, right?
Yeah. So that what I think is a more overarching theme is trying to educate the public and that they have an ability to, whether it is to not call the police or the different mental health options that are out there, just
Right.
other resources that are available that aren't necessarily just dialing 911.
It's the role of the police to not solve everyone's issues, but to set you up, to scaffold you for success in solving some of your own issues, right? You don't always have to call 911. So we talked about that definitely. And the police department has a role in that aspect of policing that makes it community policing, so.
We also talked about, like, do we want to incorporate opportunities for breakouts within these panels? So grouping together and having separate conversations within these same meetings, or do we incorporate what a human library style is, which I never heard before the meeting, but seems like would be a really interesting way to just bring the community together with the public safety department. And how would the panels look as well, so.
And then we want to get as much attendance as possible, so Kavita's gonna try and get a banner over El Camino.
Yes.
Yes, we would like a banner.
So Kimberly and Michael, if you can help us make that happen, that would be awesome.
I think
I know
that's
you- I know
community
you gals
service.
wield enormous power, so. Yeah, we want to get the word out, so we don't know all the ways the city gets the word out. But we definitely would like to brainstorm on creative ideas for getting people to be aware that these things will be happening, and hopefully with the variety in locations and dates and times, we get a good representation from the community. We also need to explore translation. So these are all things that we'll need to talk about, so.
I think that's a good summary.
Should I,
Can I just call out one thing in your interest in,
wait, member?
yes, ma'am?
I have a question for the city manager. Do we go to the other report before?
Before taking in additional comments, I think you would do both report outs, and then you can have your conversation. And then you can go ahead and open it up for the public if they'd like to comment on either update. Unless you want to do 2 rounds. I mean, it's pretty flexible. This is not an action item. It's an informational item.
I guess it makes more sense to do 2 rounds.
Okay, keep it consistent, sure.
Yeah. Can I have public comment at the end, or do I have to do 2 rounds of public comment?
If you're gonna do it parsed, you're gonna do it twice. So you'll take in the comment about your first update, and you'll have your discussion, and then your public comment, and then you'll do your second update, and then you'll do it that way.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, all right, man, that works.
I just was gonna say, you're talking about how the department engages. You just have to remember, I think Dreams and Futures, Explorers and PAL, and probably a couple of the programs, they actually have pretty high contact with youth in those, and I think those are great, at least in my experience, in my whole life. Those kinds of programs have been pretty successful.
Other questions before I open it?
Well, we can probably do this after public comment, but I'd be interested if which topics the board members would prioritize, and if there's anything that we would have wanted to see here that they're not seeing here, but we can do that after public comment.
All right, let's open it up for public comment. Would any member of the public like to provide comment on this presentation? If so, please submit a blue card, or if on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9 on your phone.
We have one, Bruce England.
Thank you. Bruce England, speaking for NBC-PRA again. I just want to thank you for answering the question in the last section. That was exactly what I was asking about, as Eva said. So thanks. I know it's out of step, but anyways. And then on this one, I'm just going to comment for both of your advisory body rather your subcommittee, your ad hoc committee report outs, because it's the same thing. Just thank you for creating this part of the agenda. Because before it was sort of slipped in various places and now it's far more organized. It's nice to have its own agenda item. So thank you for that. Thanks.
All right, I'll bring it back for PSAB discussion. Member IR posed a question to the rest of the board. I'll open it up for comments from board members. Can you scroll down real slowly, but like. No, I lost it, but I guess the one question I think is really interesting is like, what does the future look like? How do we get ahead of newer crime trends? Cause like scam callers are like, they're operating on like a new game. I don't know, like we've been trying to call you about your car's warranty or what is it, something like that. And then they're calling me in Mandarin. So like, what are these new challenges? I was like, I don't even speak Mandarin. I speak Cantonese. So once scammers start calling me in Cantonese, I'll let you know. But like, I think it's interesting to think about the future. What does that look like in terms of crime and then also crime prevention? I think that's an interesting idea. I don't think I've ever thought of that. Any other discussion from the board? Okay,
Neighborhood Watch has always been really good at helping communities get involved and being a part of the solution.
would that go under opportunities for partnership?
Yeah, I mean, I just, in my experience, the police department was heavily involved in Florida where I was. So we had like a liaison officer and he was there at all our meetings, and listened to our questions, went back and got research, came back with answers, also provided a lot of information for resources, products you could use, things you could do around your home to keep your home safer, awareness training, just things that you could do in a group setting in someone's house, with a bunch of neighbors, teaching each other how to look out, for absent neighbors, all those kinds of things. And I feel like it also, in our community, it had the sort of additional effect of, because we met at someone's house, it got everybody together in one house. People talk to each other when they normally might not. And got everybody to care a little bit more about their neighbor when, because everybody here's very busy. So I find like I don't know my next door neighbors where I live, and I've lived there for 10 years. So it's just, I would love to do it, but I just don't know, if there would be an appetite for it. Thank you.
Any comments, Member Ayer?
Have we ever had neighborhood watch in Mountain View?
There has been in the past, Neighborhood Watch. Its popularity kind of fell off after the popularity and the use of Nextdoor. So it was something that can be brought back. If there's neighborhood interest, we can examine how best to bring back a Neighborhood Watch program.
Next door. That platform. Oh, gotta stay off it. I think that's a really interesting topic, Member Frank. Thank you for bringing that up. And what I heard from you also is maybe the youth engagement one may be lower on your priority.
Oh, no, what I was just saying is that there, I feel like they have a lot of programs that maybe a lot of people don't know about,
Oh,
and that
so, okay.
it might be something that you could.
Got it. So if we can only have 3, which one should we drop? Just curious if anyone has an opinion on that.
I think that more people would be interested in homelessness and response strategies, community safety, and youth engagement. And if the opportunities for partnerships were kind of divvied out between,
Horizontal
The-
across the.
it might. That might be in my personal opinion, that might be the least priority of the four.
I could see, you could have the opportunity for partnership in each one of these topic areas.
Mhm.
Cool.
I thought opportunities for partnerships could go along with the community safety, crime prevention, accountability part, but I can also see Member Satter's suggestion that it could be combined with any of the three. But that was I'm just sharing a difference in interpretation.
Yes. Good points. Thank you.
I'm thinking if you're thinking about trends, for me, it's youth engagement because trends start with at least the opportunity to change trends can be assisted by how you engage new public customers. So, and I feel like youth are public customers, and if we were able to improve or engage deeper with them, that might change other trends that might come down the road that are unforeseen.
Does PD have a youth advisory board specifically? I know you have explorers. Do you have an advisory board?
No, city council has YAC.
City council has, yeah.
The Mountain View Police Department does not
You
have
don't
its
have a
own youth
specific-
advisory board, correct?
I kind of think as far as attendance at these meetings, I think it's good to talk about. I think youth engagement is an important topic, but I don't know that you're gonna actually have younger people attending. I have a feeling it's gonna be more parents and, you know.
And, it brings up ideas about, do you record these or do you, like, if there's topics that are interesting, could the SROs, for example, take them on the campus to the committees that are there and get additional feedback? I don't know, but we'd have to look at how to engage those populations that might not actually come to the meetings. Are there other ways to get feedback?
Member Langton, if the goal was to perhaps to combine the concepts of providing access and awareness of these youth opportunities, but to have youth show up at the meetings, we might be able to partner with schools to have them on campus immediately following the final bell ringing or whatever they call it now. So if it's that type of like educational, informative opportunities, like these are the programs the Mount View Police Department puts on. Here's how to participate. Here's the content to take to your parents. That's something that might work well.
So we had it at a school and adjusted the time to when school ends.
Correct. If it was germane to the students, I think that might be the only way to get a large number of students present. That seems like a logical way to do it. If that was what the board recommended was, for example, increasing access and awareness, to the Mountain Police Department's community engagement for youth activities. It's a significant number of things that we do. That would be a great way to do it. But
That makes
otherwise, I
sense.
agree. I don't know how we get kids to actually show up.
Yeah, no, that's a good point though. Yeah. What time, what ballpark, when do the schools get out? Is it like 2:30, 3 o'clock or something?
Yeah, 3-ish.
You know? I think we'll remember to bring that up when we meet again.
Well, and we can ask the youth advisory committee to the SROs how they think it could happen. Right, we could ask that question. I mean, my kid's always rushing off to something after school, so probably wouldn't stick around because he's got to go to soccer or something. So, but maybe like a Friday or something. I don't know, but I think it'd be a good question to ask them. How would we do this?
So we don't have a youth committee for the SROs.
School, what's that
The
school?
superintendent has a youth committee that provides input and feedback, and they are providing feedback. Correct me if I'm wrong, on the SRO program and the concerns or if there's
Oh.
probably negative that they're hearing, but there's not a specific board that the SROs have.
Oh, so the student advisory committees that were mentioned are for the superintendent.
Correct.
Oh, I
That's where those
misunderstood.
complaints, or feedback, quite
This is
frankly,
to
it
the
doesn't have to be complaints, but that's where the feedback process is monitored at the district level.
Got it. Okay, we would ask those folks.
If I might add, member, that council is for general school-wide stuff too. It is not specific to SROs. It's just an avenue feedback mechanism
Thank you
that
for
they are able
clarifying.
to provide if something comes up to the administrators about SROs if there was an issue.
Right, that's why you mentioned
Got
challenge
it.
team. Now I
Thank
got it. I
And
need
we
to-
have access, I mean, we would have to ask to interact with them. They are not our group. We don't have their direct email and contact. That wouldn't be appropriate. So I just want to meter the expectations of our access to that group. There are a lot of other youth groups and something like this perhaps would be better YAC related or student body. I don't know that it has to be so specific as that, the benefit of that group. There are a lot of youth groups that could probably make advice on how to come.
As far as this, where I think we'd be targeting high schoolers in general, they don't, I know when I drive by some of the local schools, there's like a line of cars picking up the kids, but I think those are the, elementary or junior high. Like, I'm just saying, having it at like the end of a school day, might you be able to get parents as well?
Potentially,
So,
we'll have to ask. Well, thanks, everyone. Sorry,
Final thoughts on this item? Okay, seeing as there are none, the ad hoc committee on youth substance abuse, any brief updates on?
I guess I'm left holding the. Jeanette and I are on this, Evan and Matt have participated. Oh, you don't have a third board member, no, just the two of us. So, the subcommittee has come down and we have input from two Stanford researchers about substance abuse and little about what you can do about it. And the last meeting, Matt and Evan were with us. And they had a little more information about what's going on in Mountain View. And we came down to, we'd like to know what's going on in the area and in terms of what kids are using and how they're getting it and how big a problem it is for us. And find my notes. Questions like, are the dealers in school or how do they get it? Most of the information we were getting were spots of information here and there. You gave your vision, the two people from Stanford were giving what they knew. It was sort of like the 6 people who were feeling an elephant, 6 blind men who were feeling an elephant, and one said he's like a rope because he felt the tail, and the other said it's like a hose because he felt the trunk, and so on and so forth. So the first thing we want to do is see if there's any literature out there about solutions that have a good ending, meaning reducing the amount of substance abuse, and especially is due to substance abuse. And so we figure we want to find strategies and factors that propitiate kids to use drugs. We're talking about meeting to talk to schools, and Evan would be helpful there. And we want to talk to the advisory group of students at Mountain View High School. You said you set that up. And Matt said he can help with trends in the county. And I said I would do a literature search. And then we will look for reasonable solutions if we find that there are. The feeling after our two meetings was, what the hell can we do? And is there any solution to this? We really feel incompetent. Without tools, without anything, but maybe when we do get some reliable information, stuff that doesn't feel like peeling an elephant. We might be able to come back with a report that makes some sense. That is what I have to say.
Questions from the board?
It's almost like being a parent, right?
Yes.
But the thing that you have to offer, I think, is reliable information that we could share and, disseminate to help other parents who may be feeling that way. Cause I know I was clueless. I mean, well, what do you do? How do you stop it? And the idea that there might be, a resource that we could go to get information about what to do and where to go, at least where to start, might be super helpful. So I think you're onto something.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I remember Jeanette saying when she first pitched the idea that there was kind of inconsistent quality of programming available to students at the high school level on the drug problem, what to look for, what help you have, right? And so, because MVLA is one district and Jeanette was at Los Altos High School. And apparently the programming there was different than Mountain View High School. And so I think, I really feel this is a community issue and we don't necessarily have to draw borders at this is Mountain View only because our kids go to different high schools, but they live in Mountain View. And so I recall her saying there was really inconsistencies in the messaging, how it was being delivered. It might have had DARE at Los Altos High and it was something else at Mountain View High. So I think getting consistency and quality programming and rinse and repeat, right? Because the message doesn't get through the first time. Would be something I think would be a very achievable goal.
She inquired about what the department could do, what like presentations they could do at the school sites to provide information.
We're really back farther to would a presentation do any good? We're back to there. We want to see what, if anything works, or if everybody thinks that nothing works. We really felt defeated, but I know that's not a way to start things, so we're starting at the beginning to see if we can find.
The programming doesn't have to be a presentation necessarily.
There can be other ways.
It could be other ways.
And that's where have there been successful programs in the world?
Yeah.
And we can find some.
Or you could invent them, and then everybody else will adopt it.
Yes, but we will need data to do that.
Yeah, so my question was like, what discussion was there over like what's already being done at, elementary, middle and high school level? Like, was there a discussion on?
We weren't getting much information about that. What they're doing is trying to, tell kids about the danger of drugs, and we know that that's spotty through different school districts. So I just felt we were wrong.
I remember I was educated via DARE as a child, and I feel like there were a lot of inaccuracies and
What's DARE?
Drug.
Consent.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can you say it that louder?
Drug abuse resistance education.
I remember there's like a lion mascot.
And
And
you
a
think,
theme song.
That's what you remember from
He's
your
got a costume
programming.
once.
Yeah.
and you
I
think
grew up
that,
that part.
Shows me age.
and you think the information isn't
I'm
good.
older than you, so.
Yeah, there was some
Yeah.
inaccurate, it was very much like, kind of like fear mongering, like.
Say no.
Yeah.
Mhm. This is your brain on drugs.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
generally the kids know where to get stuff. And they're actually sometimes more educated than the people presenting to them, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, at the school that I work at, we do like a program called the Neuroscience of Addiction. It's from, I forget what his name is, I'm sorry, I'll have to look it up. But it goes through like an acknowledgement that like, well, it's this education program that this professor did to kids that were experiencing addiction. I think they might have been going into like a program because they had gotten in trouble with the law for drugs, maybe possession or something like that. And it acknowledged that like we humans do drugs for a reason because it like feels good, right? But it also goes into the neuroscience of addiction and like dopamine and how it affects like your brain development and how hard it is to resist the addiction to something. And it has students try to take out something that they habitually do. Try to cut out being on your phone for a week. Can you imagine a teenager cutting out phone use for a week? Absolutely not. But like, it's like, but like, try it because the dopamine, like there's a dopamine effect there, right? So that might be something I'll look into. I'm seeing a lot of trends in higher nicotine and marijuana use, especially with the advent of vaping technology, right? And yeah, there's a prevalent idea that since they think it's not as bad for you as like an actual cigarette or like an actual joint, and also the discreetness of it because it doesn't smell as much, right? There's a kind of mockery of the PSAs that are out there currently. Like, yeah, there's just like a mockery of the current PSAs that are out there because they're like, oh, you're gonna get the lung disease, you know, like like there's also like a lack of understanding of like the seriousness of the effects of what's out there. I don't know.
And keeps it resistant to understanding the seriousness. As I remember.
Yeah,
Long
because,
time ago,
like,
but I remember.
Back when they were trying to prevent us from smoking cigarettes, so we had like the woman with the hole in her throat and we were like, yo, we don't want that to happen, right? But we don't have that for vapes right now, right? Like,
But there's stories about the effects of vapes and the worst case scenarios. That I have seen stories about that. It's not in media, like in commercial and in marketing, but it's in stories, like news stories, but they're not seeing those. And they also don't believe it's gonna happen to them.
that's the big part.
Yeah.
The culture around vaping is generally like, it's just very discreet. No, I mean, even if you're in like a place that says no smoking, they're a regular vapor, they're just like,
Sure.
you know. But I think we're also interested in more severe drugs too.
They have vape alarms in high school bathrooms now, at least at the school I work.
Do you have any comments about what I just said?
Specific.
Any corrections? I know I didn't get it all in, but.
I know one of the things that you and Member Wang were talking about was identifying the problem that you're trying to solve still, and that it didn't feel to me, with all respect, that it was hopeless or that you guys had a sense of defeat. I didn't get that impression, but that you were still working identifying the problem that needs a solution and looking at a kind of scalable solution for the needs. So certainly I think the education, the access, the components are still things that are valuable from my perspective, for the ad hoc committee. So would encourage you not to be too discouraged.
I'm just projecting my own,
I'm
how
not-
can we solve this
Respect, you are
problem?
Always
not a
me.
failure.
The goal
Yeah.
does not have to be to solve youth substance abuse, but to address the needs in a more effective manner, or to make recommendations that will better support the police department's application of such. So I think that you will find absolutely value in the work that you're doing, and it's out there. It's not solving world peace or anything else, but it will be hopefully tangible and something that can be applied.
That's why he's the chief.
That's why they pay him the big bucks. If I may reframe, you are tasked with solving a problem to which we do not have a solution yet that is bigger than two people. And it's okay that you don't have the immediate answer yet.
I do feel like we have leeway for creativity, for ideas that maybe are
Well, that's what
a
I'm,
push risk taking.
that's what I'm hoping will happen.
Right.
All right,
Other discussion?
so any comment?
We have to ask, I think we have to ask the
We've
public.
we've commented, and I think the public is probably tired of
The
it.
public's gone to bed.
Right, what?
I second that we believe in you, Joan.
Yes, all in favor?
Well.
Jeanette has a perpetual optimism on the solution for this, I think.
You know, she's the other.
Yeah.
She's young and full of hope.
Yeah.
All right, what?
And cynical. We'll never solve it.
I was calling,
They'll
I'm just
always be
calling
great at
myself
it.
being cynical. Anyway, would any member of the public like to provide comment on this item? If so, please submit a blue card, or if on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9 on your.
We have someone who called in, so I do not have a name. Hello, would you like to speak?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicholas. I live on California Street, and I just wanted to touch upon the conversation around youth substance abuse. I think that banning vapes is on the council work plan, so I'm curious as to what our progress is on that. And I've seen some articles about statewide vape usage amongst high schoolers going down. My idea is that, young people think that tacky things should be avoided at all costs. And one of the main challenges of the tobacco industry is that as soon as we whack one mole, another product comes up. And so, to the extent that we can combat the marketing campaign of these tobacco companies and make them seem tacky, that may combat it.
Are there any other public comments, please?
I have a question to staff. Is there indeed something on council work plan about banning
About
vapes?
banning vaping.
I believe there is a vaping item, but I don't know the context. There is an update coming at mid-year with our mid-year budget that will include an update on all the council goals. So for reference, just letting you know that's coming up, but we can certainly look up that answer for you and give you a reference point of what that item is.
Thank you. Is there any way to lobby for a bill to mandate that tobacco companies include memes in all of their advertising? Because as soon as something cool, or as soon as something in teenage culture is used in marketing for a company, it becomes uncool. So maybe that's a unique strategy, like, I'm sorry, I'm so unserious of a person.
Join us, Alex.
It was public comment, you just missed it.
Blue card.
Board. Okay, further discussion on this item from our board? Okay. Seeing as there's none, we will move on to item 6, PSAB staff comments, questions, and reports. Next item, is board staff comments, questions, I'm sorry, I read that. twice. Okay, no action will be taken on any questions raised by the PSAB at this time. Do any PSAB members or staff have comments or questions? Breyer?
It's just really brief. So just a quick update, on something that has occurred over the last few days, and just to let you guys know that it's been happening and that there is a plan to address it. So there's a CBO meeting once a month, and all the CBOs that are local come to that. I attend that as in my foundation role. And at the last CBO meeting, community-based organization, nonprofit, basically. At the last one, we were informed that there would be, choosing my adjective here, but I don't know exactly what the right one is. There would be greater enforcement of vehicle households that had expired registration, other violations, including, so it kind of ran the gamut from expired registration and expired tags and things like that to
Broken red lights.
to yeah, and all the way to like more public health concerns like leaking sewage, or there's a word that starts easement, that the public right of way was blocked with trash or stuff. And so the CBOs were all like, okay, we'll let our community, those of us that serve the RV community, will let people know. And were surprised when the greater enforcement went into effect. So the meeting was on a Tuesday, and the greater enforcement went into effect on a Thursday. So basically concerns were raised to me as a foundation person, because all of these folks are our grantees. So we're talking about Reach SV, United Effort, Day Worker Center, CSA. It's like, hey, we haven't had a chance to tell our folks yet, let them know. And so basically conversations are going on about, how we can make sure that the communication between the police department and the CBOs stays very timely, very proactive, so that everyone has a chance to communicate and do the best they can. Because once enforcement comes in, you're writing citations, $50, whatever, citations to people who can't afford to pay it, right? So you're making the hole a little deeper, and you're potentially instilling fear in a community. These are their homes. Once you get a citation, you might get a second one, a third one, then you might get towed. So the fear is very real that your home might disappear, right? And so anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. Chief Mike and I had a really good conversation. Was that just yesterday?
Yes.
Gosh, it was just yesterday, but it was a very positive conversation. So for those of you who might or might not be aware, I just wanted to flag that communication is really, really critical between the PD and the community. I think we have some wonderful examples, like when the PD had to ramp up enforcement of food carts downtown. There was a really great way that communication was rolled out and a partnership was formed. This one felt like a little bit of a miss in terms of it kind of happened too quickly and people couldn't tell the community. But I feel like we have some plans in place to kind of get back on track. So I just wanted to give that update and sort of open it up for feedback from the PD.
Thank you, Member Ayar. I don't have a lot to say other than to echo that it was a good and I think fruitful conversation that we had yesterday. That the police department is absolutely committed to equitable application of the laws so that Mountain View is a community for all in earnest. And that does mean sometimes enforcement in places that may or may not, land well with folks, but we are equally committed to ensuring that we have positive communication and engagement and maintain these strong relationships that have been so successful and also a hallmark of where we are in the community. So Without getting into the specifics of the conversation, I am confident that we can continue to maintain strong relationships and strike a appropriate balance as we move forward.
Appreciate that. Appreciated your time yesterday too.
I would just offer, in my own experience, the guys who do the vehicle registration and tag enforcement, I've chatted with them in my neighborhood, and they're always in my neighborhood looking at cars. They've been doing that since COVID ended, slowly, and been ramping it up. And some of these cars that I've never seen them going after vehicle homes, but some of the cars parked in the streets in my neighborhood are like, out of compliance for like 2 years, 5 years, etc. And it seemed like that's what they were looking for. I don't think that they were looking for, at least what I saw in my conversation with him, he wasn't looking for, folks who were just out of compliance or folks who were housed in their cars or anything. It was just sort of the more egregious ones. So.
Other besides staff. Questions, reports. Okay. Well, I have like 5 items, so I'm sorry. You're gonna have to listen to me for the next however long. Anyway, I wanted to. No, I am serious.
Oh, I thought you were joking.
No. I would like to give a very sincere thank you to our deputy city manager, Ms. Kimberly Thomas, for filling in while our assistant city manager, I'm so bad with titles, I'm sorry, has been out. I have heard a lot of comments from the public of appreciation for your taking in feedback and being very receptive to the board and also to the public. So yeah, thank you for your hard work.
Of course, happy to do it.
I'll be sad to see you go. I hope to see you again, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. As we have been tackling, I didn't transition this well. Move on to another item. This board was created from a call in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. And so I feel like as a board, we have tackled the more immediate, more pressing things that have come from that call. And I feel like we're kind of coming to a head where we have addressed some of the more immediate items. And I'd like for us to think about expanding our scope. As I think originally was intended to include like fire, what can we do about emergency response? How can we incorporate CERT more? How can we how can we get our neighbors to be more prepared for emergencies? Things like that, public safety, other things that have involved public safety, right? I also posed this question to Chief Canfield before, but I just wanted to note that I've gotten questions from the public on why we haven't, as a board, reviewed the public safety building, and you've answered that question for me in email. Just wanted to say it out loud. I've also gotten some concerns from the public about the passing of the CARE Act and trying to keep police from, I think there's like a form. I'm not the most familiar with this, but there's like a form when there's like a CARE Act kind of detention, am I correct? And so there's like a spot on the form for like the diagnosis of the person that's being held. And so there's concern that police should defer to that portion of the form for mental health professionals, like when that person, detainee, like that form should be deferred to the mental health professional to assess them. And then the last one was there is also concern about weapons that get retired from police departments. whether they are ones that are confiscated or they are equipment used by a police department. Apparently, the New York Times has reported that there are some places that will send them to disposal companies that will destroy one component of the weapon and then can resell like the other components of the weapons. And then like apparently now you have a new ghost gun in the market, and so that's very concerning. And so I just wanted to put that out there as something that is a concern and has been raised to me. And any responses to things that I had raised?
So can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
If we were to consider expanding our scope, is that, I don't know that that's up to us. That would need to come from city council.
That's how I understood it.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Yeah. We were given a
clarify that.
mandate.
I would say that some of the items that you raised, Vice Chair, would be components that can be discussed as a part of your new work planning. And I think the context for that would be as a guidepost for the team, for Audrey and the chief, would be looking at what the original intent that the council provided for the direction for PSAB. But certainly these are discussion items that the committee can continue to have. And I believe that working session is actually coming up pretty quick. It seems like it goes quickly each year. And then some of those components, perhaps there could be informational items that you could have on that, perhaps the chief. For example, the care courts, that could be, have someone come in from the county that could perhaps speak with you and share information about that, or the weapons issue, the chief or his staff or someone else could perhaps gather information on that. So some of the things that you raise, I think, are imminently doable in terms of addressing from an informational exchange perspective or a dialogue component for your work planning.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
So to have somebody come in and talk to us like about the CARE Act, or to have more of a discussion about how confiscated weapons are disposed. Is that a work plan item, or could we?
It usually would be a work plan item
would
that
be a
you
work
have a component of a number of areas that you want to learn more about.
Okay, so learning would be a work plan.
Yeah, it would usually be work plan. So you want to raise it when you're having that discussion. So in the mix of all the things that you're doing, you could see what your time allotments are. And you could look at that big picture when you have it all on your screen, when you're typing in your updates and things like that.
I wanted to express interest in the CARE Act and the disposal of confiscated weapons. Because I was gonna bring up that teenager in San Jose that did ghost guns, that just got arrested
yeah.
for ghost guns.
I
And
saw that headline.
then I was feeling sleepy, so I'm like, I'll bring it up next time. But I think those two, I'd be interested in finding more about. So whenever we determine our work plan and learning opportunities, I'd like to try to remember these.
I'm a teacher. We do 5 seconds of wait time is good to like help you process. Do I have a question or comment? Anyway. We will now move on to the final item of tonight's agenda, which is adjournment. This meeting is adjourned at 10:16 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michael.